That's right. So a friend of mine told me an anecdotal story where like he was convinced his downstairs neighbors were North Korean spies because he was like they looked Korean. One spoke perfect English with an accent I couldn't place. And here's the thing, because like they were it was two dudes and a chick. And they clearly were like, it wasn't like a Three's Company sort of thing. It just sort of felt like, oh, hold on, give me 1 second.
Bear with us, folks.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's all good.
Like, because like, but they seem to be friends, and they're like, oh, we moved from Korea, and they were always super polite. But like, the way they saw things were like, they were like, whoa. And you could just show them the most basic shit, like, is like for them to see like Family Guy for the first time and then look around like, yeah, the TV said a bad word. You're not gonna get fucking arrested. Why are you acting like this? That's not normal behavior, dude. All
Mhm.
right. So like, he got him drunk, and like they wanted to be super prim and proper, so they never smoked in front of his neighbors. And he was like, bro, just smoke out the kitchen window, you're good. And they never had an American cigarette before, so he was like, I knew that dude was a fucking spy just by watching him fucking rip a Marlboro Red. And he tilted his head back like the Hank Hill meme, and exhaled like he just took a bite of fucking filet mignon. All right. So like, like, it's ay ay ay. Look, uh, I believe it. Where like you show a North Korean porn, and 3 hours later he's already like built a goon cave under his bunk bed. Like
Oh yeah,
you ever see? Are you familiar with StarCraft, the video game?
I've played StarCraft. Yeah, growing up.
Oh, okay, okay. So when you play the Zerg, the creep is necessary to build on.
Oh
You
yeah.
cannot build on Terran or Protoss territory. You can only build on creep, right?
Yeah.
So, if you show a North Korean porn, like fucking Juche creep, but like an evil version of it starts to spread from the soles of his feet and the palms of his hand. And then when he beats off, now his dick is made out of Juche creep, and his phone is now transmitting Juche creep. And he becomes that meme where you see like the fucking monstrosity with the gigantic muscular arm and the rest of his body is weak and frail. That is the fate of all North Koreans when you expose them to porn. Dude, please send me that video. I need to see this video now.
Oh yeah.
Okay?
No, there's got to be out there somewhere.
So the whole point I'm bringing this up is that like the title of my next book is "It's All One Thing" and a little trademark symbol at the end. So, um, uh, okay, I'm the co-founder of Cars and Women magazine. It's a zine that I do with my buddy Anatomy of the Heads. He's the editor in chief and a co-founder. So in issue no, so basically every issue of Cars and Women magazine, we have a theme, and people just send us shit about the theme. So for example, issue 1 was gambling. Issue 2 was banned in China because as a joke, I was like, hey, the Great Firewall, and they allow some sites, but they don't allow a lot of sites to be shown in China.
Hmm.
Is queenstrash.com available in China? And he went, I regret to inform you that you cannot access the website from China. So it was like, so issue 2 basically became fuck China. That's issue 2. Issue 3 is mutants, 4 is crisis, 5 is sports because there's an exclamation point at the end of it. 6 is death, 7 is life, 8 is food, 9 is going to be romance, 10 will be city. Yeah, 9 is going to be romance. Then we're going to cities, and the point is, from the death category, okay? Let me see something. I'm gonna show you the origin of this cockamamie horrible thing I'm telling you about. It's all one thing. 1 second. So I made this thing called the Ukrainian litmus test. Okay.
Okay.
So the Ukrainian litmus test was like, it's fascinating how you can deduce what people believe in by their take on the invasion of Ukraine. If they're rooting against the Russians, and specifically, if they spell Kiev with a Y,
Yeah.
then there's notice people just accepted that and propagated it, and no one ever stopped to think, hey, the city of Ukraine, Kiev, the capital, it's been the capital for like a zillion years. Yeah, we're spelling it different now because reasons. Anyone who went along with that, I guarantee you, my friend, if you're rooting for Ukraine, and if especially if you spelled Kiev with a Y, then you probably, let's see, let's take a look at the list. You probably displayed obedience in getting injected with the gene altering mystery fluid. You probably have a reflexive and performative disdain for the South. You consider pattern recognition to be the devil. You have unironically called someone a turf. You champion men kicking the asses of women in sports. You have perspectives on sex and race that subvert genetics and common sense expectations of the world. You see FBI crime statistics as systematically racist hocus pocus in the form of numbers. You believe that women are just smaller, weaker men with hips and pussies who need mastectomies to actualize this. You scream about how black trans lives matter during Pride Month but never consider who puts them in harm's way. You think white supremacy is anything other than a convenient phantom you're told to chase in your head. You can make educated guesses on what else they think about, like giving puberty blockers to kids, George Floyd, the Second Amendment, the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, Gamergate, socialism, quite a bit, and it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone by now. And I would like to conclude the Ukrainian litmus test by telling you something I know to be true, and this kind of sums up culture war. Are you ready for it, White Pill? Are you ready? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, there are no woke flat earthers. None. You will never meet a flat earther who, in this house, we believe in. Nope. There are no flat earthers that are progressive. There are no flat earthers that are liberal or woke. Because it is a
Hmm.
package deal to believe in that. If you believe in flat earth, you most likely, and there's overlap with other bad ideas. That's it. It's like a software update. It's like a patch. Like, does that make sense? Like, because
Yeah.
if you look at the people on the left, say their names. And now it's like fucking liturgy in church. We have to say the name of dead black man number 3. We venerate and remember dead black man number 4. We venerate and remember Michael Brown. We venerate and remember George Floyd. We venerate and remember man pretending to be woman number 6 with the afro. We venerate black autogynephile with autism that trooned out after watching a lot of lesbian porn number 4. We must Right. It's so like it's never just one thing. You will never meet a guy who believes that the world is flat who's like, "Hello. I do not involve myself with politics. I am a caring, respectable member of society. My neighbors enjoy me. My kids look up to me. My wife respects and loves me. Also, the earth is flat." Nope, it doesn't happen. It's always like, "The earth is flat. You know what else, man? Okay, dude, I'm just here to buy drugs from you. Stop. I'm not your friend. I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry. Because you gotta meet crazy people and assholes for the good shit. I hate to say that, but you do.
That's true. That's true.
I so so like never there are no woke flat earthers. Like there none because it's a package deal. Because guess what, my friend? It's all one thing. It's all one thing on the left. There are other examples of this on the right. My favorite one being flat Earth, and that there are no woke flat earthers. But oh, you're pro Ukraine? Let me guess. You really like Star Wars and Harry Potter, right? Oh, you're rooting for Ukraine. Let me guess, you voted for Biden and you lament the fact that Kamala Harris lost the election. Kamala Harris, the Hindu Dindu. You are sad she did not win. Like, right. I hope this makes sense because, like, if you believe in the lie that men can be women and women can be men, you will believe any and every other lie. If you do not see pit bulls as anything other than unquantifiable threats that put everything and everyone around them in harm's way, that's all someone needs to know about you. Let me ask you something, White Pill. Let's say you're married and you have kids, okay? And Mrs. White Pill is like, "Oh, hi honey. I'm I'm just making veal dumplings like in the old country." And White Pill Jr. is like, "Hey dad, check this out." And he's fucking doing sick tricks on his BMX bike on the homemade ramp you made him in the backyard. And White Pill Jr. the third is watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and he's really into it, and he's doing the arts and crafts thing that Mr. Rogers is trying to teach the other kids around him. And then, hold on, you got a knock on the door. And you're like, "Hello, White Pill. My name is John Johnson from Wisconsin. I'm your neighbor now." And you're like, "Hello, Mr. Johnson." And then you see that he has a pit bull. That's all you need to know about him. You don't have to get to know him any further. You can make several educated guesses about his character, about what he believes in, and what is important to him just by knowing he has a pit bull. Or, alternate scenario. "Hey, I'm John Johnson from Wisconsin. I just moved in." Now say, what do you think about pit bulls?
What do you think about pit bulls?
"Oh, they're scum of the earth." What do you think about them now?
I mean, yeah, seems like an all right
It's a
dude.
good
I'd like to
son.
have a beer with him. Yeah.
See? That's it. That's it. That's it. Now you have common ground. The two of you can look at 2 plus 2 and both of you come up with 4. It doesn't There are very few litmus tests in this life you can put your you could bet everything on it. Like, realistically speaking, uh I know there are exceptions, but exceptions do not prove the rule. Can you do me a favor? Can you look up the NAXALT fallacy? Not all X are like that. It is a form of logic that people often, like, for example, like that whole, "But my pit bull has never whipped the throat out of the babby." So you're wrong, because my pibby with the flower crown is good dog. So you mean bad man with the bite statistic. Why you go to dogbitelaw.com? You bad man. Says the guy who owns a pit bull that posts a picture of his precious little baby eating fucking sub canine with a flower crown on it. So, as we all know, all of your statistics and common sense and reasoning and abstract reasoning and pattern recognition, huh, for nothing, because that person subscribes to the "not all X are like that" fallacy. Hell yeah! And you know what? Go to Google Image. Can you go to Google Image, because it shows the NAXA, because it shows a bell curve. This is one of my favorite anything in the history of ever. I've thought about making this a flyer. This explains so much in life, but I digress. So, like, like, realistically speaking,
Oh, hello. Yeah, think we got some technical difficulties issues. Give us a second, fellas. We're gonna get right back to it. Bear with us, guys. Oh, think we got some technical difficulties. Gonna take a pause at this moment.
Oh shit!
Welcome,
I
welcome
accidentally
back.
closed the tab by accident. My bad,
Yeah,
dude.
that's all good.
Uh, um, oh man, I don't remember. Ah, fuck. What did I leave off on? What was the last thing you heard me say before I got sucked into the void?
It was about the NAXALT fallacy. You were talking about putting up flyers for it.
Oh, oh yeah, because listen, this explains a lot, and because like if you understand the bell curve meme, you're already halfway there. Okay, so yes, the bell curve meme can sometimes be used with shitty like it doesn't. I'm sure you've seen that meme where it was like, nice argument. Too bad I have you depicted as a soy jack and I'm the winning Wojak. I'm sure you've seen that before, like, or like there are variants of it, like Machiavelli, or no, Dante Alighieri. He was like, nice argument. I depicted you in misery, crying in hell. Good try.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, so um, look, the not all X are like that fallacy. Like it's just another way to figure out 2 + 2 = 4. Like when you go, oh well, not all pit bulls are like that. That's funny because the not all X are like that fallacy is like, well, my precious child-eating pibby, no, do the bad thing. So that mean your recognition and your abstract reasoning and the trail of the dead that you show me that wrong because you bad because my pibby flower crown. Like that doesn't like that is what it sounds like when someone refutes that 2 and 2 is 4. That is when an R strategist cannot mitigate or conceptualize threats to the self. So that being said, I've tried really hard to come up with ways to convey this to other people. I inadvertently struck pay dirt with the Ukrainian litmus test. And as time went on, I crossed friends with someone who's become a friend of mine, Basil. And I heard him say the term, it's all one thing. And as if several quick time events happened at once, and I nailed all of them, it clicked. And it made me realize one, I have to keep putting my work out there because someone saw my work and went, oh, yeah, here's the answer you seek, whether you realize it or not. And you find out because you left something in the world and I picked it up and I commented on it. And now I've given you a torch to carry to so you could get the fuck out or keep going further. So Picasso once said, good artists borrow, great artists steal. So I only steal from the best. So I took It's All One Thing from Basil, and it means so much to me. I'm having him write the foreword. Um, I've come up with a lot of incredible shit over my lifetime so far. Writing with Despair Prohibited, Keep Hopes Up, Respect Troops. It's okay to be infected. Stop tomboy genocide. These are things which endure and they're true. And, if you believe in the lie that men can be women and women can be men, you will accept any and every other lie. But nothing happens in a vacuum. Like I mentioned earlier, White Pill, even MC Ride leaves the void once in a while to hang out with the drummer and programmer of Death Grips. Okay. Even MC Ride, Mr. Cryptic screaming like he has the powers of all the homeless schizos of the United States combined. Okay. And even he just sits there in the lotus position as he telepathically moves the paintbrush and dips it in the black ink and goes back onto the canvas while a cat sits perched on his shoulder. Even he, from time to time, has to escape the void and go to civilized society because he has an art gallery to host. You know? So even MC Ride has to go out and get groceries. Okay, nothing happens in a vacuum. So remember, boys and girls, if you're going to steal, steal from the best, because I've decided to steal for the sake of my book title, and I picked no one greater than to steal from. By the way, don't steal actual things. I just mean art and artistic concepts. Um,
Of
yeah,
course, of course.
it's all one thing. I really hope what I barfed out into this microphone and into your ears against your will has made something resembling sense, dude.
No, no, it certainly has. Um, yeah, it is strange how the some of the people you meet that hold these opinions, they seem like they're just kind of part of a hive mind, and you can kind of intuit uh, going from topic to topic what their stance is on the thing. And I think it's it less like so speaks on behalf of like the individual and more so on the conglomerate that they're a part of, because it becomes this exclusive club where you have to be either in or out, and you have to hold these acceptable beliefs as the left and right diaspora become more and more uh, polarized. That if you stray from the path of extremism on either the left or the right, they kind of they filter you out in a way. Like I used to be a leftist. I in fact I even in my time in university I had a crisis of faith where I was just getting bombarded with all this anti-capitalist stuff, and I remember sitting in my room, my fucking shitty apartment in Quebec, um, thinking like, okay, well, fuck, like all right, well, if it's so bad, then like, is the whole point of life like, should we be living in communes then? Like, if I'm to believe everything you guys are saying that capitalism is bad and all this shit is awful and racism happens and all that, like, okay, then isn't like the answer then like communism? Like, that's just the logical conclusion that you've kind of led me down on. Like, am I supposed to go into that? Because my family history would have a point or two to say against that. You know, some of the things that I've learned about that, like it just I didn't feel like my place was in either conglomerate, and I was like, "Well, fuck, this kind of leaves me not politically homeless, but just like I don't know, ideologically homeless." Or it felt like I just didn't have the people that I belong to. So I can understand the people that want to have that kind of homogeneity um, with their group and their in-group beliefs, because it offers them a sense of comfort. And that also that phrase that comes up, like the right side of history, um, that like when I hear that, that also irks me. It's like that this idea that the future generations are going to look back, and if your beliefs were acceptable enough, or if you just said the right things, that history would look favorably upon you, which is so like beyond fucking retarded. Like, first of all, who the fuck cares what the future generations are gonna think of us? Like, of course we're gonna get shit wrong. Like, why would you put any kind of stock into that or any kind of
Yeah.
like
I
emotional
mean, just
value
just
into it?
just just look at fucking lobotomies and electroshock treatment and
Yeah,
fucking foot binding. Like,
yeah,
you'll never believe it, but at the time, it was the thing. It was
yeah,
the thing to do.
yeah.
So no doubt, we are gonna look back on. I really hope we look back on hormonal birth control and the trans movement as egregious mistakes that we just let happen because we fell asleep at the wheel.
Absolutely.
It doesn't make sense, and you are correct where like the right side of history, the desecrate, there is a very unique peculiar use of language that the left does, because the left uses terms like the right side of history. Like, here's my favorite example: feminism is the radical notion that women are human beings and deserve rights, and it's like the radical notion, as if like you come into this world and you are like incomplete, even though you are a creation of the divine. And ideally, your parents wanted to bring life into the world and to care for you and to nurture you and to impart the life lessons and lived experience that they have accumulated in the totality of their waking existence onto you, their child. And guess what? It's not fucking enough, because you don't see women and men as equals, and the radical notion that women, get the fuck out of here. Because that same term radical is also used when people say turf, trans exclusionary, radical feminist. Get the fuck out of here. It's no, 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 no. And you know what? These disgusting, good for nothing, fuck face, piece of shit, talentless oxygen thieves have the same fucking nerve to say things like, "Oh my God, white pale, what you said, or problematic," which is just, they'll tell you it's problematic, but they won't tell you what the problem is. The word problematic just adds another verbal layer, like an onion skin, to solving anything. But it's
Hmm.
like, I put the onion skin there, so that means it is valid. And if you tear down the onion skin, you are tearing down my validity, and that means you hate black people and women. And it's like, but like, you're a Jewish broad from Long Island. Why are you saying that? Like, okay, you're a fucking lily white woman from Delaware. Why are you saying that? Because I listen. Parts of Long Island are predominantly Jewish, and they come from money. What do you want me to say? Eh? It can't be white people all the time. Okay, fine. You know what? Let's pick on the Chinese. You're a Chinese lady living in Vancouver. Why are you saying that? There you go. Even though black on Asian violence has been a dirty secret of the West Coast ever since the 1970s, and there are really. Can you do me a favor? Can you look up Thai Grandpa Beat to Death California? Which, by the way, I miss doing these on my spaces, because you were able to find, no, no, not high, Thai, like from Thailand. My bad. That's my bad. Like, I gave the most bum ass, bare bones words to look things up on, and you found exactly what I was talking about. Yeah,
Yeah,
there you
yeah,
go.
yeah.
There you
Here
go.
it is.
Okay, so the day after he died, they held a march against white supremacy. Spoilers: that was not the race of the man who beat him to death.
Let's see.
Watching you do this in real time, I haven't had this much fun since I saw speed running live.
I'd do this for a living if I could, man. Fucking man. Okay, this is the most frustrating thing about watching the Joe Rogan podcast these days. When I see Jamie try to fucking fact check some shit, it always just irks me because he uses Google, which is an inadvertently extremely biased search that, like, the UN has actually come out and said that they will alter search results regarding climate change and all these other subjects. Whenever I see Jamie like using Google or whatever, all these basic tools, or he's like, "Oh, I'm having difficulty like looking something up." Look, nothing but respect for the man and the podcast and what they've built. But Jesus fucking Christ, do I want to tear my hair out when I see them uh try to fact check some shit and they're like, "Ah, fuck, we weren't able to find it." Like, dude, you have like the largest capital of any podcast in the fucking world. Like, you should be able to use actual sophisticated tools. That's an aside.
Oh, well, I
Yeah.
think it's safe to say at this point that Google is not a search engine. Like, it's not.
Oh no.
It is not. And in fact, it's kind of scary that, like, you know, Yahoo is still pretty like solid. I understand that most people don't want to drive around in a Corvette after they've driven a fucking Maserati. I get it. But a Maserati is not good for everything. Also, Yandex, I would argue, has a much better image search results than Google. Yandex is really, really. I have found things on Yandex even after the 19th page of results, I have not found on Google. Also,
Oh
what
yeah.
irks me about Google is that you'll get AI generated nonsense that is usually like very incorrect. And then there are sponsored links, which are not what I wanted. And it doesn't. Anyways.
Yeah, I
So,
wasn't able to
so
find anything about white supremacy, but I'll take your word for it because I believe it. I know exactly what you're talking about. Like there was a hot moment in the summer where it was all stop Asian hate, and then when people started looking closer to the statistics, they found that the black community was actually the one responsible for committing the most crimes against Asian people, and that whole story went away real quick because this was still they were still living in the heyday of the color revolution of BLM. That it was very inconvenient to point out the fact that it's actually majority black people that are committing crimes against Asians. And whether or not like you'd like it, like that's a fact that's backed up by FBI statistics. So like what do you like you got to reconcile that. You can't just ignore that. But then the moment that it came out, all of that just went away. Like I remember to this day we were playing oh my fuck, we were playing Apex Legends. But I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's like an FPS battle royale game that was
I've
famous
heard
for
of
a
it.
little bit. Yeah.
Which for the record, I will never owe up to the amount of time I have spent playing video games because it was a very integral part of my upbringing and my life. And up until my early 30s, it was an incredible thing I very much enjoyed, and I just don't have the time or energy for it now. But, like, to answer your question, I know exactly what Apex Legends is.
Yeah, yeah. So there was a moment when it wasn't just Apex Legends; it was Call of Duty too. But you'd sign into the game, and then all of a sudden you're welcomed with this message, and it was essentially this fucking activist filtered DEI fucking bullshit paragraph that they laid out saying, "Here at Apex Legends, we stand against hate." We don't condone any of that stuff, and they released some like icons that you could put on your profile as well to say that you stood up against Asian hate, but all of that moment lasted all of half a second until people were once again like able to look at the statistics and be like, "Oh shit, it's actually an inconvenient fact that the black community is the one that's perpetrating the crimes against them." And it none of this like none of that would matter. Like I wouldn't care about any of that shit if they weren't just so high off their own fucking farts like that one South Park episode uh that they had to scream it over the rooftops like, "Oh, this is the thing. This is the current thing we have to care about." Okay, fine. I'm down with that. Like by all means, stop Asian hate. I'm all for it. I don't want to see fucking 80-year-old grandmas getting clocked by some dude that's trying to steal their fucking purse. But then when it comes to, actually, the perpetrators of these crimes are black, and then the whole message just went away. And then I'm just left thinking, like, oh, so you actually didn't even care in the first place. Like, you actually didn't give a shit. And yeah, I see that image that you just posted there. Let me just pull it up on stream there.
Thank you. Okay, because this when I saw this picture, like this was sort of like the
Jesus
final
Christ.
phase of me going, I will make up my own, like I don't I could hear the groaning and disgust all the way from here, dude. Like this is okay, have you ever seen the movie Blade Runner?
The second one or the first one? Because I've yet to see the
The
first
first
one.
Oh, okay. So it's the first one. Like basic I bring it up because like running theme in the movie is a Voight Kampf test, the test that they
Mm-hmm.
administer
Mm-hmm.
to see if you're a synth or not. I sometimes joke about how like, you know, the earliest Voight Kampf test is just playing fart noises, and if whoever doesn't laugh, like you could start to deduce that they probably are a synth. There's something about fart noises that every culture finds funny. It's one of the few universal constants in life. Eskimos from Eskimos in Antarctica all the way to hood rats in the South Bronx, all the way to hosers and psychopaths in Manitoba, and someone ice fishing in Yellowknife right now. They all find fart sounds funny.
You got to be careful saying Eskimos. That's a hate crime in Canada. Actually, I'm not a
Okay.
word of a lie. I'm not even kidding. There was an article that came out about Kendrick Lamar using the word Eskimo in a rap lyric, and on CBC they called it the E word.
Oh, okay. First of all, whenever people say the E word or the N word, that's like you're forcing me. That's like reverse. racist spell check because I don't want to have to think about those words, but you saying the N word, I know exactly what word you're referring to, and I'm saying it out loud in my head. I did
Oh
not
yeah,
want to do this, and now you're making me say and think about something I did not. It's almost like a fucking incantation, really. You
yep,
know? Like simply alluding to the beast, and now you must say the beast's name in your mind. Like it's really fucking insidious. Um, oh my god.
yeah,
Oh, Kendrick, it wasn't your fault. You just stated the obvious.
yeah.
Um,
I'm glad my
but
tax dollars went to paying this fucking piece of shit journalist to write this.
so what really irks me though is that like um on my main account, I added Wesley Yang, who's like he's been one of the few voices of reason about like this trans stuff, but he wrote a book called The Souls of Yellow Folk. Um
Oh yeah, I know
which
him. Yeah.
like it's a take on the book The Souls of Black Folk. But you know, it's wild because like he doesn't neatly fit into the right left dichotomy, but he
Hmm.
is a real one, and I will always be considerate and grateful because I'm like, hey, Wesley Yang. So, like, you know how on Twitter, like, a running theme I have is like posting something incredible or terrible and going, is there a term for this? So that flyer, Justice for Vicha Dead Thai Grandpa. Excuse my ignorance. I know that sounds mean, but just please. So I was like, is there a term for this? And he said systemic gaslighting. And I was like, whoa. Like
Yeah.
he has more of a right to say this than I do. So what's really sad is when Asian people look at that and they're like, yeah. Like, can you imagine that, dude? Stop and think for 1 second, White Pill. There are Asian Americans, look at that, and they're like, yeah. That's fucking scary to me, dude. For me, that is scary than trying to like beat the arms off a synth that's trying to choke me to death with his cold, unfeeling mechanical hands. And like I'm hitting a rock against his head as hard as I can, and he's showing no facial expression because he probably can't even feel it. Like, right, that's scary. What's scarier is when like a third generation Asian American is like, Mom, I'm gonna go march against white supremacy. Okay, is everything all right? Yeah, some Thai grandpa got stomped out by a melanated individual, and just saying that is verboten because we can't say the B word in this household, so I'm gonna go march against white supremacy. Bye. Okay, honey, if you need me to pick you up, let me know. Like that's like, and for the record, one of the greatest indicators of privilege and Western, like, I don't even know what to call it, but I was on a date with a third generation Thai American. Her grandparents came to this country because, like, there was like a US Army landing strip in Thailand located in Pattaya. And in fact, I know people like to go hookers Bangkok, LOL, but like if you want to go to the largest open air brothel in the world, go to Pattaya, Thailand. Okay, so Thai locals realized, whoa, American GIs are here. All right, let's bring the booze and the bitches. So that's how Pattaya started out. Okay, so um, her grandpa was one of the first guys that sold booze to American GIs during World War II when they were taking off and landing in Thailand. All right.
Hmm.
So he makes some money and he comes to America. And there's a Korean saying that the father is a fisherman, so the son is a doctor, and the grandson is an artist. That's very true because he like worked construction, he ran a food stand. This guy was literally working 7 days a week. And he put his kids, her mom and dad, through college. Dad became a lawyer, mom became a doctor. And what does she do? I'm a storyteller and conceptual artist. Right. So now I'm on a date with this broad, third generation Asian American, high to be exact. And China is surrounded by countries who hate their fucking guts. Because the only thing worse than white supremacy is Han supremacy. Okay? And even though there are 53 ethnic groups in China, they all keep their boots on the necks of all other ethnic groups. Because it is the Han Chinese and the Han Chinese only. Uyghurs? Never heard of her. Anyways, so China's surrounded by countries that hate their fucking guts and hate their loan shark ways, and China just happens. Oh, like, oops, sorry, there was a famine, the Great Famine. My bad. We have so many famines in our country. We have to call the worst one the Great Famine. Anyways, we're here in your country now. And that's what they did. The first Chinatown in the Western Hemisphere is in Panama because we just fucking threw dynamite and Chinese people at the Panama Canal, and that's how we made a canal. Okay, it worked with the railroads, huh? So, I'm sitting on a date with this woman who's she doesn't even fucking speak Thai. All right. I'm half Greek and I'm half Ecuadorian. Y claro que sí que yo me hablo español con un acento gringo, pero estoy sentando enfrente de esa muchacha que es lo tercera generación de gente de Thailand. Y yo me dice la palabra Chinese lung herpes. And she was all like, how dare you? That's horrible. And I'm like, yeah, but like, China runs all the casinos in your country, and on the border between Thailand and Laos, there are illegal casinos. And if you ever get a scam caller, it's probably an indentured Indonesian service that got shanghaied into an office building that is owned by a Chinese billionaire. Isn't it weird that China has no qualms? Like the same way, like Elon Musk is like a quote unquote rogue agent, an element, and an outsider, even though he's very complicit and a tool of like the current administration. Yeah, China's been doing that for a long time, but with organized crime and billionaires. Haven't you seen The Departed? Fucking, no ticky, no laundry, Jack Nicholson screaming at triads who are working on behalf of the Chinese government. Yeah, okay, you have no this bitch had no allegiance to I love women, but she's a bitch. She had no allegiance to China, but like there are a list of things in progressives' heads that they're supposed to be offended by, but they can't tell you why. Kind of like when you watch the Whatever podcast and there's a woman who's like, even though I'm 400 pounds, I'm living my best life and I deserve to be fucked by Chad Thundercock. And he better be 6'3" and abs and a beard and he has all the 7 Dragon Balls and he has a chocolate dick that ejaculates money and I deserve this because of patriarchy. And then you ask them, can you define patriarchy? I'm going to cry right now. And she runs off and takes the headset off. Right. So I'm sitting across this dumb cunt bitch. I love women. So I'm sitting across this fucking hag, this battle axe, this ball of chain, this woman who does not come from the land of ning a ning a ning 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 ning, but clearly has loyalty to Asians as a whole. This ethereal phantom term that is now the banner which you wage race-related jihad against, and she's sticking up for people that would wish to see her never fucking exist. And she got angry that I called COVID Chinese lung herpes. That ultimately is the greatest example of Western liberalism I could ever imagine. An outsider who comes here and then, or my favorite example is when an Indian who comes from like the Brahmin caste in India and all the other people below her on the caste system, they wash her ass daily and wait on her hand and foot, and then she comes to this country and scorns other people about privilege. That's the greatest example of like Western liberalism I could think of. It doesn't come from the Chomsky hunks. It comes from the precious people. It comes from the precious children of the immigrants with which they fought for, who grow up to resent their white occupiers but love the white ideology because it gets them to be okay with perpetual victimhood status. And yeah, that's I hope this makes sense to whoever's listening to it, because I'm certain it went somewhere. It just took me a long time to get there because we had to take a detour for justice for Thai grandpa stomped out. I still can't get over that, dude. I cannot. I this is You see that picture? You see that picture, White Pill? Like the first Voight Kampf test is showing that to a human being and saying, and then showing them the perpetrator and hoping they respond the way you hope they do. You know, or like there's a line in the first Blade Runner where it's like, "Oh, Nexus 6, I make your eyes." The fucking like tech engineer synth builder says. So like Nexus 1, Nexus 2, Nexus 3 are like the models. Like I don't know if you've seen the first Terminator movie,
Oh
but
yeah,
like
yeah.
so Kyle Reese was like, "Oh yeah, like the synths were sniffed out by the dogs, but by the time we got to the T800 model, it was indistinguishable from a person." You know? So Nexus 3, you have to show them footage of like a kid who takes off his COVID mask and then his mom puts the COVID mask back on him and the kid is screaming hysterical and crying. Yeah, up until Nexus 3 that works because you show that to a human being and they're going to freak out. You show them to a synth, they're like, "Why is child not complying? Child must wear mask. Why is child not wearing mask? Child must comply." That's when you put two in the back of the head because that's not a human being. So, um, if you show a synth, if you show it an earlier synth, justice for stomped out dead Thai grandpa, and you showed them the perpetrator, it would be like, but white supremacy. Oh, you're a synth. So yeah, I hope this makes sense. I'm more than certain I'm rambling here, but I'm full of beans and I'm angry and I have opinions. That's why I'm on your program right
No, no, that's
now.
right. That's why I wanted to have you on. I knew this. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while now, so I knew what I was walking into. It's no surprise to me. No bother here. And honestly, the way that I just as a quick aside, I don't as stupid or retarded as this may sound, I don't really consider the audience when I'm recording things like this. It's just for me, it's the most important thing is that I have a good conversation, that I'm enjoying myself, and whatever attention this gets is whatever attention it gets. I don't really want to focus on the outcome. So as long as I'm having fun, I don't give a shit. But no, I know exactly what you mean because during with the hive mind thing that you've been talking about, all the shit tests and whatnot, I would encounter it like during COVID when um, I would have to kind of pussyfoot around like certain subjects because I'm like, all right, I interact on this person with a daily basis. I don't want to fucking sour ties because I got to work with them all the time. So I'd like be careful about my wording here and there. But every now and then, um, either a word or a phrase or something would come up in conversation and it would be like a breath of fresh air. And I'd be like, oh, okay, you get it. I understand. You get it. You passed the shit test. I can loosen my tie. I can be myself around you. I don't have to feel guarded or have a certain opinion because I know exactly how the hive mind thinks. I was in university in the sociology program right at the peak of social justice. I even remember that I took a feminist class in my last year in university because it was like one of the few things that I had to that I could take to graduate. It was the only course that was open, and yeah, that was an eye-opening experience to say the least. But yeah, this shit test that you would have to conduct with people just to see how cool they are. It is quite literally become a real thing. Like you actually have to be able to filter that kind of stuff out. And you know, as you said, like it's not 100% applicable, but I mean, like anything else is ever. But it's a solid indicator of whether or not the person is able to handle criticism or hold two different opinions in their head at the same time, or just be able to use logic and reasoning to cut through bullshit and be able to get at the heart of an issue, or at least just see the world for gray and shades of gradation instead of just simply black and white, as much as the culture war is made out to be. Um, but yeah, there are certainly these like little tests that you can do here and there with people that will help you determine like whether or not they can actually hang, whether or not they can actually disagree with you and not get into a shit fit. Because yeah, I know exactly what you mean about the dating scene. I had to stop using all the apps and get off all that just because I just kept encountering all this resistance to people. Like I remember this one girl I hooked up with. We were hanging out, and I forget how the topic came about, but eventually we were talking about COVID or something, and I forget what I said, but she basically hit me with like, "Oh, I didn't realize you were unvaccinated," and I was like, "Yeah, I didn't get like the two jabs," and she's like, "Oh, I just kind of assumed that you were," And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. So you're just kind of going about your day-to-day business, interacting with people, and you're on autopilot thinking that everyone is kind of, in the same kind of headspace as you and holds the same opinions." Um, which was interesting because yeah, we'd never talked about COVID or vaccination or anything up until that moment. And then when it came up, it kind of hit her. She was like, "Oh, you're not of that mind. You're not part of that group." Safe to say, nothing went on with that girl after that, COVID or otherwise. But um, yeah,
Oh, dude.
it's
I
strange.
okay. Okay, first off, uh good on you for surviving the greatest and worst psyop in human history up until today.
Oh no, I look
Um,
as a little caveat, I will say I did get the first jab because I was not for one, there was a family member of mine that was having a kid, and I thought that me not getting the jab would mean that like it would cause issues between me and my family of like not being able to hang around the kid or anything like that. Um, my niece there, and I thought that it was going to be one and done, so I fell for it. I'm just straight up. I fell for the first thing, thinking that yeah, they were gonna hold their word and that they were gonna be honest about it, only to be
they
absolutely
weren't.
fucking lied to. And I did
Yeah,
not. I didn't think it through. I assumed up until that point, like, hey, vaccines are the golden ticket. This is the way out. So I was just so done with being isolated. I was thinking like, man, I just want my social life back. I want to be able to see my friends. One of my closest friends also has asthma, so I didn't want that to be an impediment, and there was all these just social
mm,
pressure. So I was like, I just look, if this is what they say it is, and I have no other reason to believe them, like even though they lied about the masks and all these different things, like okay, maybe it's actually worth taking this risk. And then by the time that they asked for a second dose, I was like, "Oh no, I'm not interested. I'm good, thank you. Like you guys already fucked up. Like I'm not interested at all." So I'll with all due respect, yeah, I did fall for the first one, but after that I was like, "Nope, I'm not going back to that water hole again."
now, just I'm only saying this because I respect you. Have you gotten an HIV test?
Never in my life, I don't think so, no.
Okay, because I don't know what batch you got, and I don't know what kind of vaccine you got, but there are reports and instances of people who got the COVID vax that are now HIV positive. So I'm
Good to
not
know.
telling you this to like I'm not telling you this to like scare you or nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I could like in fact, hold on. Uh I think I even have it in the fucking second book. And I'm not saying this to like scare you or fearmonger you or try to be like, oh, go what you did. But like, no, no, like this is, I, hold on, hold on one second. So you could put it up, on the, here we go. Okay. Uh, And again, like, I mean, I know there were different batches for the vaccine. They, not all of them were mRNA and like that. Like, but like, it's, you know, I think people should do their due diligence, like, and just, and I'm not trying to scare anyone when I say this, not trying to freak anyone out, but Um, I have an entire chapter about the COVID vaccine in my first book. And again, I don't claim to have any special knowledge. I'm not an insider. I don't have access to anything that the rest of the public doesn't. But shampoo has to be tested by the FDA for at bare minimum 2 years before it gets on the shelves of the public. These are things that are injected directly into your fucking body, and it bypassed the FDA. And
Oh yeah.
that alone should freak people out.
Not just
But
that, they're immune to lawsuits. Like for me, that was the straw when I learned that like that they were not only are they immune to lawsuits that you can't sue them after that, but that also the only way that they could give the vaccine is if there was not a pre-existing medicine or therapeutic that could give you similar or even like slightly worse results in terms of treatment. When I learned about that, I was like, oh, then this is like 100% a fucking scam. Like these are the same people that pushed opiates on the entirety of North America without any second thought. Like I have no reason to trust these people anymore.
Oh shit. Okay, okay. Just so I'm not like, just so I get this out of my system. There's a chapter in my first book called "We Used to Have an Opioid Crisis," a proper opioid crisis. So, um, even though the reason we're in Afghanistan is to protect poppy fields for the Sackler family, uh, I will say that in the late '90s up until the 2000s, it was unusually easy to get like prescriptions for painkillers. Like,
Hmm.
I'm sure you heard anecdotal stories where, like, doctor, I have anxiety, I need weed, and they're like, here's your medical marijuana card. It was
Yeah.
possible to be like, geez, dude, doc, my knees hurt. Here's some pills. It's non-habit forming. In fact, hang the fuck on, because if you will allow for some shameless self-promotion, white pill, can I tell you about the opioid crisis? Uh, ISIS. Okay, this really shouldn't take long. Chapter is not very long. Here we go. um, Here we go. Pharma industrial opioids are semi synthetic, which means that Big Pharma has to synthesize them from natural opioids, in this case, poppy plants. All proprietary opioids are made from the poppy plant or its derivatives like raw opium or morphine. Semi synthetic opioids such as oxycodone were introduced to the prescription market from the 1950s onward, followed by slow release formulations, Oxycontin, in the 1990s and early 2000s, which doctors began embracing for treatments of chronic pain and pain relief. Among them were the fentanyl patch, hydromorphone, and Oxycontin, the latter of which was made by US based Purdue Pharma, which aggressively marketed its products to practicing physicians and medical school students as a highly effective painkiller, including addiction. Prescription numbers soared in Canada, the United States, and elsewhere, as did growing reports of and overdose deaths. It is an epidemic that has formally changed shape since all opioid roads no longer lead to Afghanistan. Yet more people found out that, you know, more people died from synthetic opioid overdoses than the number of U.S. military personnel killed during the Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan wars combined. Fentanyl kills someone here in the United States every 8.5 minutes. It's the worst drug epidemic my country has ever been put through. Also, I'm pretty sure Trank is just American crocodile, but what do I know? So, yeah, I think it's important to note that whenever there's a drug problem, one should stop and consider if the drug problem is as if one wants it there. I hate to say this, but the opioid crisis never really gained attention in the United States until black people started dying of opioid deaths. It was okay as if Whitey died from pain pills, no one gave a shit, even though the term hillbilly heroin became a thing because of the fucking opioid crisis. Nah, but once other people, and isn't it, wow, whites in the poorest regions of the United States, it's almost as if pills are getting airdropped into their community, kind of like how crack showed up in every inner city at the same time, kind of like how AIDS showed up in every inner city at the same time, kind of like PCP showed up in every inner city at the same time, kind of like heroin showing up in every inner city at the same time, kind of like, this goes on. So, can you do me a favor? Can you pull up hillbilly heroin? Let me see what shows up. Oh, hell yeah. Come on, pills.
Yeah, OxyContin.
All right. You are correct. Your rewards is crushing weight of knowing. Yeah. Um.
Fun,
I'm just. Oh, tell me. Go on, dude. I'm
fun,
sorry.
fun fact. Here in Canada, we have this program called Safe Supply, where the government pays drug manufacturers to create opiates that do not give the same high as fentanyl, but that still will give you a high. That they distribute to the homeless and safety injection site shelters. That the homeless. The idea of the program was to make sure that like okay, well, they're getting all these fentanyl laced drugs, so why don't we give them drugs that are not laced with fentanyl, but that are still weaker than fentanyl, so that at least they don't overdose. And, you can argue on the merits of that idea as long, till the fucking cows come home. But at the same time, what ended up happening was because these drugs were not as effective as fentanyl, what they would do is they would actually take the safe supply drugs and then give them to their dealers in exchange for fentanyl to the point where there were a couple drug busts that happened where these fentanyl dealers were found with these safe supply drugs and they're like government like made. So our tax dollars went to essentially supplying drugs to not only the dealers but to the users who actually didn't even end up using these drugs. They've since like reworked the policy and they're working on changing their stance now, actually to the point where BC, where the problem is probably among the worst, where they are now actually involuntarily forcing people into psychiatric programs. So they are slowly opening up the asylums back up for the people that desperately need it. But there was a very, very long period for several years where they were doing this test pilot program where, yeah, the federal government was actively making or at least subsidizing drugs to be passed on to addicts and then eventually to the dealers. It is a laughable. The response that the Canadian government has had is nothing short of laughable uh, with the fentanyl crisis, and I even remember I was working as a cook at this pizza joint in Ottawa. It was like the center of the tourism district, and I was talking to the bartender at the time. We were about to close shop, um, and we were just standing at the bar, and we noticed in the alley right beside the bar that there's a deal going down, and we're like, whatever, like people deal drugs here all the time, like it's no biggie. Then we see the fucking guy pass the fuck out and so we called the cops. We had to get the EMTs to come. They give him the naloxone treatment. The guy wakes up and he's visibly angry because naloxone negates the high that you get from all these opiates. So it was like he woke up and they ruined his high. So I've seen like
No
firsthand.
fucking way.
Yeah, I've seen
Dude, are you
firsthand just how bad this shit is, and it is absolutely disgusting that a safe supply program was ever even considered, let alone defended on the national stage by all these people when these drugs are actually being like passed on to uh drug dealers who just went on to sell them for even more profit and buy even more fentanyl and just keep pressing it. Like it is absolutely disgusting that not only has this happened, but that like our tax dollars went to paying for this system, which only perpetuates it even further.
I'm okay. First of all, um, you'd be surprised how common that story is. I have heard 7 different versions of that fucking story and even saw it with my own eyes once.
Oh yeah.
I always keep Noxalone and because like I'm not trying to make myself out to be like fucking Saint Michael or nothing, but like I saw a guy just pass out in front of my building. And I remember going outside and I was like, what? Like, did he faint? Did he have a heart attack? Did he have a stroke? Like, I don't know.
Hmm.
Um, so like I remember going like, oh, I know what this is. He's ODing. And I run back inside and I had I dated a nurse and she told me how frequent overdoses were in the ER. Um and like, she said something to the effect of like, realistically speaking, like Noxalone is kind of like a condom. It's better to have it and not need it than the other way around. And like I never forgot that. I never forgot that. So, also, realistically speaking, you never know what's cut with Fent these days.
Oh yeah,
Everyone knows someone or knows someone who knows someone that died because of fentanyl, and like that wasn't the point of their adventure.
yeah.
Hey, bro, you want to do some lines in the bathroom of this bar? Hell yeah, bro! And he's dead 20 minutes later.
Yeah, I worked with people in the kitchen that like I remember one night we were going to this bar that was just a block away and we walk in and the bar members are like they were playing this one indie band's music and they had this like in memoriam photo up and I was like, "Oh, what the fuck is that all about?" And they're like, "Yeah, this guy that we knew, he was just, doing coke as people do." And next thing you know, he fucking dies. And one of the guys that I worked with was going to the funeral and he told me that like they knew the dealer that sold him the shit. And it was like from a small town, so it was very personal to all these people. And it's nothing short of extraordinary isn't the word, but baffling that not that this issue hasn't been resolved because like addicts will be addicts and that will always exist, but just the lack of care that has gone into dealing with something like this, um, it's I don't know, it boggles the fucking mind. Like we live in it's 2025. We have like the greatest technology ever known to man in the history of like civilization ever, and yet we're still pushing bullshit policies that are effectively killing, I mean, millions of people. Um, for what? For what? Like what's the motivating cause for it all? Like who is actually like standing to gain from it? Like the cartels, China, when where all this is getting manufactured. It just I don't know. It seems so strange that like that as if this is like some insurmountable issue that can't be fixed or at least at the like just mitigated at the least to make sure
Mm.
that like these things happen. Like there's this idea that like I've heard on Twitter where like the existence of these naloxone kits, what it does, it's like it's kind of the same way of like how helmets give you this idea that you're impervious, where like having this prevalence of naloxone kits, it actually in a way makes it worse because then the addicts or people working in that field are like, oh, okay, it's okay, we can just administer these kits. You have that argument, but also at the same time, it's like, yeah, well, we need to save these lives. So what are you gonna do? There's not really a right decision to make in either case.
Holy holy shit. Okay, okay. That kind of makes sense because like, um not the most popular, uh not the most popular what's the best way to put this? Okay, not the most popular opinion, but if you take away Naxalone, the opioid crisis solves itself. Like, and
In a way, yeah,
that's a
yeah.
very harsh way to look at it, but on the other hand, if okay, like here's something from the next book, okay? Thanks to fentanyl, there's an above 0% chance you or someone you know will go through the overdose scene from Pulp Fiction with varying degrees of success or failure. Okay? Quote, my cousin is a teacher over in the United States. He saw a 13-year-old OD on fentanyl. End quote. I don't mean to laugh at that. I'm just like, that's a reality. Okay? There's one quote in particular, but I just want to finish up what I was saying.
Mhm.
Uh, so I run back in to get Knoxville, and I come back, and someone already beat me to the chase. So
Wow.
I was like, ooh, like that's good for him, you know. Um, and this guy was like, he kind of like when a guy passes out blackout drunk and you shake him awake. It's kind of like that, but he came out of his stupor just making angry sounds. They weren't even
Mhm. Mm.
weren't even words. Angry sounds, and like he was like clearly did not have full control over his body. He was like, "Ugh," and like his arm barely swung, but it was like, oh, this guy's angry and wants to throw down, even when blacking into reality. Like, what the fuck was this guy on? And then, like, paramedics show up. He's fighting with the paramedics, and it turns out he screamed something that like is actually kind of sad. He was screaming about how many bottles and cans he had to redeem to get the money to buy the fentanyl, and now you ruined his high. And like, this is all I could say about that. Okay, White Pill. I have a line in All Dogs Go to Heaven Except Pit Bulls, and it goes, "Watching junkies in Portland buy pallets of water with food stamps to dump it out and recycle the bottles for $2.40 to buy cheap fentanyl. America."
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
just so I'm not shitting on Canada all day and all night. Let's talk about America for a second, okay? The average American is an unfuckable lard ass. First of all, it's one reason because like one reason why passport bros go to other countries to fuck is because first of all, women in their native countries have fatitude. All right, here we go. Uh, Climate change is what the United States government wants you to believe so they don't have to fix the military. The Pentagon by itself is the largest producer of CO2 emissions in the world. You're going to start seeing listings for places to live like $250 a month for a tent in the attic or basement. Let's see. Ooh, even bank ATMs have $5 bills. They know what's going on out there. Big ups to Steve Harvey. You ever see Family Feud?
Oh, yeah.
All right, even better. So, let me 1 second. Hold on, and I'm gonna send you a surprise on Discord. Okay, let's see. Big ups to Steve Harvey, who used to live out of his car and sell drugs. Now he's America's favorite well-dressed black man who overreacts in Family Feud when they talk about sex. Yeah. America spends more per capita on healthcare, yet we receive the least amount of coverage. We're number one, baby. Sovereign citizens are the redditors of America. If we only received thick Latinas and petite Asian women immigrants, liberal white women would form SS units overnight. Americans spent $113 billion on lottery tickets last year. That's more than they spent on movies, books, concerts, and sports tickets combined.
Wow.
The only two identities left in America are being seen as a racist or a pedophile. Dare is relaunching after losing its federal funding in 2006, not because of the opioid crisis, but because of fentanyl and vaping. Oh, this is a deep American cut. I ain't seen nothing. The Ken McElroy story. Do you know who Ken McElroy is?
Can't say I do, but I'll look them up.
All right. So for anyone listening, Ken McElroy was a magnificent, horrible piece of shit that terrorized his community, and he was a criminal, and people were they second guessed doing anything about it. So one day, Ken McElroy was sitting in his car and he got shot like 20 something times. According to the police report, at least two different calibers of bullets were used. The cops show up and they're like, all right, what'd you all see? And everyone said, I ain't seen nothing. Ken McElroy story.
Interesting. Yeah.
Um, let's see. The only thing more dangerous to have than information that will lead to the arrest of Hillary Clinton is irrefutable proof that Michelle Obama is a man. All I'm saying is look at that picture of her wearing the low cut dress and look at her back and then look at Mike Tyson's back. That's all I'm going
That
to say.
that Oprah video where she's dancing, it, kinda threw me for a loop there. I was like, "Huh, maybe there's something to this."
Oh yeah, bro, she's fucking packing heat. Oh, he's packing heat. You see that lump in his sock? That's where it ends. Um let's see. America does to its own people what China does to the rest of the world. Hmm. Ooh. When America has a Marielle boat lift for Canadians, they will be the most grateful refugees will ever see. Their neighbors will never truly understand what they went through. Yep. The third leading cause of death in America is the economy. Uh, love is love except for God and country. Then you're a right wing extremist.
That's right.
Only whites can be racist, unless you're a black conservative. The writer's strike was funny. Imagine all that sacrifice to Baal and Moloch, and you still can't afford Los Angeles. Uh, every police gang unit has people whose days consist of nothing but going through people's social media. I imagine this is the same in all Western countries. Here we go. Dick Cheney is trying to acquire and spend every resource on the planet to keep that snarling bald head of his alive. The knife action going on in South Bend, Indiana can give England a run for its money. Ooh,
Hmm.
okay. Uh, America. A great lumbering beast who only stops to eat a bacon cheeseburger, asks someone for a cigarette he only smokes half of, and falls asleep watching something on his phone. Again. You can't spell autism without USA.
That's right.
Uh, if you made a mistake today, don't sweat it. Could have been worse. Don't believe me? One time, a guy called 911 because the fries in his McDonald's order were cold. The cops ran his name, and turns out he was wanted for murder.
I believe it.
Ooh, okay, deep cut. Mass immigration harms blacks more than anyone else in America, yet black politicians are some of the strongest supporters of it, presumably because their donors give them giant bags of money with cartoon dollar signs on them to fuck over their own constituents. Sad, but also kind of hilarious. Uh, land of the unemployed, home of the overqualified. Let's see. You have a greater chance of being stabbed while working loss prevention than you do just minding your own business in a sketchy neighborhood. Uh, let's see. Oof. Every day, someone in America takes their first bite of Fancy Feast while holding back tears. America has more people in jail than any country's ever tried.
Yep, that is
Uh,
true.
Frank is just American for crocodile. Do me a favor. I'm going to send you a word on Discord and I would like you to look it up so you know what the fuck I'm finally talking about because it is not a popular thing.
Oh, I know what
But,
crocodile is, yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah, it originated in Russia, and it degrades your skin to the point where it's green and pussy, and I've seen it. I know what it is, yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
there's a drug that gets passed around and sold called Trank, where it's like if you're too much of a poor degenerate piece of dirtbag thieving shit with no soul to afford fentanyl, oh, you gotta have Trank. Or maybe you're a piece of shit that wants fentanyl and you get Trank instead. So from what I've seen, remember, ladies and jerks, pattern recognition and abstract reasoning. The only thing I can compare Trank to is crocodile. So I'm convinced Trank is just American crocodile. Um,
Oh, yeah.
when people think about the biggest employer in the United States, they tend to think of giant corporations. With approximately 2.7 million civilian employees, the federal government is the largest employer here. For reference, Walmart has 2.2 million employees worldwide.
Yeah, Walmart is also the largest private employer of Americans, yeah. And
Is it
fun fact,
true?
yeah, it is, and the Canadian government is actually, I think, the public service here in Canada has risen 40%, I think, over Trudeau's reign. I think it's the fastest growing sector in the Canadian economy when it comes to employers.
Ooh, and real
Yeah.
quickly, in the year 2000, someone wrote a book called The Case Against Walmart. Listen, if buying isn't owning, then piracy isn't stealing. All I'm gonna say is, if you could find a PDF of that book for me, I will pistol whip your nemesis to death on the steps of a church of your choosing. Okay. Um. Ooh, here we go. I never understood what Muslim countries meant by the Great Satan until I went to California. Oh, and you were talking about activism and why it was important back then. You have to understand, you touch on something very profound and important. Um, the biggest point of contention in the late 60s to early 70s was the Vietnam War. So basically, you had a coalition of people against the Vietnam War, and what else was their gripe, right?
Hmm.
Like, the Vietnam War was one of the few things the Black Power people, the Yippies, the Earth First, the activist types, the fucking direct action people, which that's what that's called. Like, oh, I'm gonna chain myself to a redwood tree that's set to being like, cut down. That's direct action. Direct action is the thing everyone sort of identifies feds as, and it makes sense because on like an image board we got to start hanging politicians, or like, that's it's sad because direct action is not always propositioned by feds, but all people can. The only thing the powers that be have at their disposal is having everyone that stands in their way being called a fed by their allies, because that's really all they have left. Um, as the hippie generation aged out, they couldn't realize their selfish and self destructive worldview led to reactionary movements. They tried to suppress it online and failed. What started as a counterculture evolved so fast, they became the police state they protested against in the 60s in order to try and stop it. There were enough hippies who grew up and cashed out to vote Reagan twice. Remember that. The
Mm.
hippies voted in Reagan. Remember that. Okay. Ever see the movie SLC Punk?
Can't say I have.
Well, I greatly recommend it for a number of reasons. One reason is that it is one of the greatest examples of I can't tell if what happens in this movie takes place in a matter of days, weeks, months, or years. It's expertly written, and it is a gem, and it is an incredible movie. And there's one line where, the son, Matthew Lillard, the guy who plays Shaggy in the
Hmm.
Scooby-Doo movies, um he's like the main character, and he's, fuck you, dad. And it's he accuses his dad of selling out because he was like, but you guys protested in the street, and blah 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 blah, hippies activism, you sold out. Son, I didn't sell out, I cashed in. So I think about that
Mm.
from time to time. Also, one of my favorite gags in a movie is in that movie where, like, they're at a show and they're like, "Oh, watch out for that guy. He's like the most punk dude ever." And like, it's the guy who fucked the pie from American Pie, and he's just like happy jumping up and down. He's not wearing a band shirt. He just looks like a normal dude at a show. And like a guy bumps into him, he fucking throws a haymaker and knocks him out and goes back to enjoying the show like nothing happened. Cause remember, like, if you go to a punk show, the guy with the mohawk, that's not the punkest guy. The punkest dude at a punk show is the guy who showed up in sweatpants and a flannel shirt. That guy has seen and been through shit. You don't. No, 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 no. He probably lit Nancy Reagan's car on fire. Ay, ay, ay. Oh, before I forget, let's see. George W. Bush. It's hard to imagine, but one time everyone had to sit through 7 years of fat terror, defend freedom, and starting two wars. It led to beheading videos becoming a thing. One asshole got on a plane with bombs in his shoes, and we still take off hours to board a flight today. Let's see. Uh, Here we go. The Vanguard Group, BlackRock Capital, and State Street Global Advisors own America. Two of the three top investment firms that own MSNBC are the same two firms that own Fox and News Corp. So, for a while, both Tucker Carlson and Rachel Maddow were owned by the same billionaires.
I believe it.
All right, let's make fun of Slavs for a second. Romanians look a lot like Kentuckians, but with half the carbs. Um, I support Israel's right to exist without American tax dollars. Whoops. Uh,
Whoops.
Public school is where kids enter as Butters and leave as Cartman.
Yes.
Oh, yes. I have never been to a city where any street named after Martin Luther King Jr. has been a nice area.
Oh yeah, the Boondocks makes this point in the show.
It's
Yeah,
true. It's
it's
very
true.
true. America should be ashamed for selling the rest of the world its broken dream. Um, if you stand at the Mexican American border at midnight under a full moon and start speaking Spanish, the ATF will show up and give you a duffel bag full of guns. The next group to make it big will be propped up by the music industry and will unironically be what the PMRC warned us about. Ooh, sheriffs should have to run for office, or every precinct should have a fire everyone and start over option. Even with body cams, the police cover for their own to such a degree, any accountability is just for show. And other than living where they police, this won't change. Look up Conarock Synthasomophone, one of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims. A naked child, bleeding from his head, jabbering hysterically, was returned to old Jeff because the cops thought it was a gay lover's quarrel, and he died hours later. Those cops got to keep their pension. Only in America.
Jesus Christ.
I'm going to send you the young man's name, and I wish I was joking.
That
Let's
sounds
see.
almost as bad
Ooh.
as the UK rape gangs where the cops got off scot free.
Oh yeah, and they were told to not press charges, otherwise they would be racist.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ba, 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 ba. People who advocate special speak because we touched on the engines earlier. People who advocate special programs for specific races either don't realize or ignore the fact that our government had special programs for Native Americans, including affirmative action since the 19th century, and they're worse off than anyone else in the country.
Sounds about right.
Uh,
You actually
Armadillo?
there's certain jobs in Canada here where they are apparently legally allowed to advertise no white males allowed, especially for universities.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh shit! Really?
Oh yeah, I'll let me see if I can find
And while you look for that, give me just 1 minute, okay? 1 minute. I'll be right back.
let me see if I can pull this up here because there were certain examples of job ads that were advertising specifically for non-white applicants. Yep, here it is.
Right, sorry about that. I had to freshen my beverage. Hold on. You Yes. All right. Which is kind of wild because it's not just in Canada, but like there were like even jobs for the CBC where it was like children's entertainment programming. Host must not be white.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Which like that's okay. Like
yeah.
that's I don't even know how to describe that really. Like I don't I I wish I was smart enough to describe that.
Yeah, here it is. To address legal requirements for supporting underrepresented groups in the CRC program, this opportunity is open only to women and gender minorities, which is defined to include individuals who self-identify as women, transgender, gender fluid, non-binary, and two-spirit people. And this is but one university in one area of Canada. So this is happening all across the nation. And it's like no, it's not making headlines. Like nobody's talked about this. Notice that the article it's only on True North, which is an alternative, well, considered an alternative news platform, because it's not considered a legitimate news platform by the government, which is why their journalists have actually been barred from news conferences, um, and they don't get to ask any questions of any of the politicians or anything. In fact, this has been a sticking point with many media organizations in Canada where they found that because they're dissatisfied with how journalism's going, people are like, fuck it, we're just going to set up our own organization. Next thing you know, they're barred from the newsrooms because they cover all these quote unquote alt right or alt right adjacent topics. And so they're completely barred. Also, not to mention the fact that there's a law on the books in Canada right now that states, or not a law, but they have a program where effectively 25% of uh, journalists' incomes are subsidized by the federal government. So, say what you want, but the old adage of don't bite the hand that feeds you comes to mind here. And so I
Mm,
don't think I would be inclined, maybe not as a journalist, but as an editor of a paper or an organization, to question what's happening with the government if, for one, I'm already barely able to keep up with Zoomer teens that are getting millions of likes on their fucking shit tweets. But then even like I'm just not able to compete in the marketplace, so I need to have 25% of my wages subsidized, which is fucking insane. Like I don't understand how that's just like, totally fine and everyone's just like agreeable with it. I really don't understand that. It's good that like the conservative leader right now is talking about defunding the CBC and completely wiping it from the face of the earth, as he should, because that is 100% like a propagandistic outlet. Like if I go on their fucking page right now, what are they talking about? Why not everyone in Hollywood loves using intimacy coordinators, or uh, the way we eat is changing. What you need to know about the future of food, or the case for a reading routine and how prolific readers stick to theirs. Now, look, mind you, this is Sunday night. Nobody's really paying attention on their page right now. This isn't the middle of the week where we have hot stories, but we're in the middle of a fucking trade war with one of our, not one of our, but our biggest ally throughout all of history. And this is what the front page of our news service has. Like,
oh yeah, it's
okay.
I hate to invoke the specter of the Soviet Union, but it's a lot like Pravda.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
happy news for happy people, you
Yeah.
know? Like but it's Canadian Pravda, so polite news for polite people.
Exactly.
It's bizarre because I'm like I'm kind of taken aback at the insane stranglehold that Canada has on its people, like even the way they think. And it's funny how like anyone who goes against the grain, um well, I'm going to call you an American in a pejorative sense of the term because you have opinions and you're loud. And then like you can't help but realize that like why do so many Canadians leave to go like make it big in America, and then you learn about Canada from Canadians. I hate to say that. I'm not because
No,
look,
it's
look.
true. It's true. The main one of the main exports of Canada is like we have students at the University of Waterloo, which is the top engineering school in all of Canada. That's where BlackBerry came from. That's like one of the major like Canadian companies that we still have that's active today. they go to San Francisco because the wages are better, because the business environment is much better, and even with the shit-filled streets of San Francisco, it's a much better beat than staying in Canada and getting paid for a quarter of what they have. And like people are waking up to this. I see chatter on like tech Twitter and whatnot, and people are talking about trying to build a more business-friendly environment in Canada, but like none of the none of the national leaders, like nobody like of the political parties is really talking about this issue with any seriousness or any kind of intention to fix this problem. Um, which just leaves it to the business leaders that are like, look, we don't even have like a good steady stream of people that are willing to come work for us. They're all going to work for Amazon or Facebook or Google or whatever the fuck. Like we just keep exporting these people, and what they do is they learn, they learn here, they get their education here, but then they don't actually stay here and build anything. They just leave. And I don't blame them. I wouldn't blame them either. If I was in their position dealing with all that student debt, fucking first opportunity, I'd fucking take a flight to SF and stay there for as long as I can.
And you know what? I don't. I'm not saying I'm glad to hear this, but it does like shine a light on things because like one must consider how bad is it in Canada that they're willing to settle for doo-doo ridden the doo-doo ridden streets of San Francisco. Like and but to kind of circle back, if I could just run my mouth for a bit. I know
By
I
all means.
put a pin on the American thing, but every place in Canada is worse than the worst part of the United States.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
I'm sorry, but like okay, um, life in Canada is worse than the memes. Sorry, you got to hear it from me.
No, I'd say
Uh,
so. Yeah, I'd say
can
I was in SF and I was like, this kind of feels like home. To be honest, like this like reminds me of certain areas of Toronto or certain areas of Ottawa where I used to work, and
or like
yeah, yeah,
or parts of Vancouver before it got extra gay.
yeah.
I'm kidding. No, I'm not. So that's what. I'm sorry. Canada leading the Westoid competency crisis. 80% of all CS students plan on leaving the country upon graduation. Attracts the lowest quality immigrants. Anyone qualifying for a TN visa is leaving, assuming competence when dealing with a Canadian. It is a country for leftovers. The smart Canadians live in Puerto Vallarta. It's in Canada. I mean Mexico. So not to be mean or nothing, but like look, I don't know if anyone is familiar with the book Ending Bigly A, but like okay, there's a guy named Bill Marchant. He's he's an editor who lives up in Canada, and he wrote a book called Ending Bigly, and it was all like, hypothetical, like what's going to happen to Trump after his term is done? What's going to happen to America? And it went in a bunch of crazy directions. It's a good anthology. So he started writing a second one called Ending Bigly A, and it's basically what's going to happen Trudeau and what's going to happen to Canada after his presidency. So hold on, Ending Bigly. So I was posting trucker memes into the void. Mr. Marchant saw me, and he took a shot on me. And the first thing that I ever had published outside of Cars and Women magazine was my piece on Ending Bigly, which is called, hold on, Sunshine Sketches of a Small Canadian Town. Hold on. Sunshine Sketches of a Little Diaspora. So there's a piece of Canadian literature called Sunshine Sketches of a Small Canadian Town. And it's sort of like an entire season of King of the Hill, but in a small Canadian town, where every single character, their little arc is a vignette. And each vignette is a part of a bigger tapestry of the life of a small Canadian town. And it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever read in my life. It really is. I'm not saying that like insincerely or ironically. Um, there's also a poet named Milton Acorn who comes from Canada, who's other than Charles Bukowski, he's probably my favorite poet. Um, there's no peer or equivalent to Milton Acorn, and I rather love his work. So uh, this gentleman, Mr. Marchant, he asked me to write something for Ending Bigly, and I submitted it. So hold on, Sunshine Sketches of a Little Diaspora, page one. I'm just gonna read something really quickly from this because I think it's important. Okay.
Mhm.
Scott used to wonder what people did at jobs, real jobs, not call centers or real retailer temping, but like office jobs with hot shit multi-million dollar real estate companies. He graduated from the University of Alberta with a master's in industrial organization and public policy, and even had a letter of recommendation from a professor for if and when he applied to a policy drafting spot at the Fraser Institute. He didn't take the gene altering mystery fluid, but more importantly, he didn't speak French. Why should he have to speak the language of people the army was sent to put down for a job? Posting such things online earned him a visit from CSIS, and 3 weeks later, he paid a gang of Somalis everything he could liquidate and was smuggled into Duluth, Minnesota. Quickly realizing Canadians have much more in common with the Americans just south of them than they do with their fellow Canadians in the next province over, he blended right in. The strip malls, fast food joints, retail shops, almost no way to tell the difference between until he saw a Dunkin' Donuts instead of a Tim Hortons. There are no pennies in Canada, and it was never not funny to him, regardless of context. Whenever he saw a take a penny, leave a penny tray, he always took one. It was never not funny to him because no one ever seemed to care. Not as much hockey down here as there is up there. It's not even on their money. The money wasn't plastic or waterproof, and he spent countless moments rubbing dollar bills between his thumb and forefinger. Instead of poutine, bacon, and maple syrup, the staples are burgers, apple pie, and BBQ. He found clothes, furniture, and gas were cheaper in the US. Milk and his cell phone bill seemed like a fortune back north compared here. Every few days held a revelation about this land that was eerily similar to where he came from, save for how much bigger things were, and a little dirtier, but nowhere is perfect. Not even Canada. Especially not Canada. The work day is longer down here, so he supposed chasing the dollar really is built into everything like a default. Stores open around 6 a.m. and don't close until 11 p.m. Back north, they don't open until around 9 a.m. and almost everything is closed by 9 p.m. He was startled to see so many 24-hour places here. He never did get used to being around pseudo Canadian, pseudo Scandinavian people instead of pseudo French and British types, but the carne asada fries were a nice change of pace from poutine. There is nothing in common between Westerners, Ontarians, and Maritimers, let alone BC, Quebec, and Newfoundland. Absolutely nothing. This can never be discussed back home. Local, state, and federal politics in the United States endlessly fascinated Scott. Back north, the provinces had the kind of power states would kill for. In the last 5 years, provinces have boycotted each other, set up internal borders, vetoed strategic energy projects, and so on. And none of this is abnormal. The Maritimes, until 2012, were connected to Quebec by precisely two lane roads an hour and a half apart. Now it's just a 4 lane. Yet they have over a dozen crossings with Maine. Ontario and Manitoba were disconnected for months when a rural bridge washed out and no one noticed. Very thin threads. In some places, only a single rail line or 2 lane rutted road tie this disgusting mess together. The provinces do very little business with each other. It is not a country that wants to exist. He was amazed at how little Americans spoke of or even knew about Canada. But how do you even explain something like Ontarians flooding the Maritimes like locusts, or all the interchangeable white jogger dweebs with egos and their dumpy but an average at best, usually Chinese girlfriends? Church burnings, supermarket cartels, luxury soups, and the gigantic open air homeless zoo in Vancouver. The man in the worn out and baggy clothing who smuggled him was a chatterbox, and he had lots to say about what happens on film sets in Vancouver. It's where they all go when they want to do shit they can't get away with in Los Angeles. The provincial government, police unions, and guilds are desperate for Hollywood money. They gladly look away and help them cover up, or so Fadumo says. Most Hollywood types wash their money in the Northeast near the Canadian border. But what happens in Georgia happens in Vancouver on a way bigger scale. Kids getting exploited, like passed around in organized capacity, blackmail, anything you can think of. Money washing and dope is huge over there. They move drugs by hiding them in the work trucks. The union in charge of transportation is 100% ran by a notorious biker gang who are so open about what they're doing that they write a label on all their trucks with a code. No shame. But no one wanted to hear about it. And even if they did, who would believe them? Besides, America's got problems, and that's what comes first. Even Scott knew that. It's so strange to be so close yet so far from home, where nationalism means socialized medicine, gun control, unregulated abortion, and immigration because reasons. Here, it's a dirty word depending who you ask. It seems normal everywhere else. He was taught and parroted canned lines of America lacking as an uncaring society not worth defending, with unsafe cities and zero regard for the environment. In just a few more weeks, he realized there's nothing Canadians love more than talking about American politics they know nothing about. They call Americans selfish for not taking the time to learn about Canadians, but most people up north can't tell you anything about Kansas, Nebraska, Arkansas, or even the state closest to them. Not America is basically Canada's unofficial name globally, which is funny because they treat their Aboriginal peoples worse than America, and that's a rather remarkable accomplishment. No match for Australia, but still. The highs and lows of America are everywhere, and not just because the middle class went extinct. Canadians are happy being mediocre and can even be apologetic when they feel they've overstepped. They want to be perceived as polite more than anything else. Scott never understood because being nice can often be mistaken for being weak. Hell, you don't even have to be nice, just patient. And that's all someone needs to make a move. Maybe that's why people in America are quick to speak their mind and let you know where they stand, because they have absolutely zero problem killing you right then and there over nothing. Maybe that's why the news and papers, when people go, oh, excuse me, let me start over. Maybe that's what the news and papers meant when people go missing in Canada, because murder just didn't seem to happen up there. He tried not to think about it. There was a lot he tried not to think about all the time, every day, during quiet moments of thought and private moments of reflection. But that was then, and this is now. Scott found a job pushing papers and staring at spreadsheets in the back office of the Great Lakes Aquarium. 4 days in, and he was thrilled to have something to do, something to occupy his mind while feeling a stranger in a not so strange land. When he was finally getting more than a few hours of sleep a night, and when things finally seemed to be catching up, one of his his coworkers, even Gladys, who was older than dirt and answered the phone, always took a moment to bust his balls, as is the tradition for the new guy anywhere at any job from sea to shining sea. He was fiddling with a pivot table and saw the office getting ready to step out for lunch a few minutes before noon. An older coworker said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Hey, how do you get 20 Canadians out of your swimming pool?" "How?" someone said as they all crammed into the doorway leading up the office. "Hey, get out of the pool!" was followed by laughter exiting the building. Scott laughed. He laughed so hard he cried, and then he wept, hysterically. And that's the beginning of my piece and ending bigly. I'd just like to say that I am Canada's favorite dissident writer, and I don't even live there. Um, I'm sorry to be so cocky, but I've only been to Canada twice, and what I saw, I loved very much. And I know everywhere changes. I went to London. It's a suburb outside Toronto.
Mhm.
It was like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting. I had never seen such colors of leaves in the fall foliage. I had never been in a neighborhood where people left their front doors unlocked. I was baffled and astounded and almost offended at how clean the streets were. I didn't know life could be lived that way. A few years later, I go to Montreal because a friend of mine is getting married. And as we all know, it's always a guy learning French for a French Canadian girl. It's never a French Canadian learning English. or some Anglo learning, French Canadian for a man. Anyways, I walked around Montreal and it was nice. It was the first time I was ever in a city and didn't look over both shoulders frantically at 1 in the morning. I was offended I could be safe in a city. I was really offended at how streets to clean were, even in Montreal, which is a major metropolitan city. But compared to my city, it was spotless. I really think Canada is a beautiful country. It has a rich tradition and it seems to create and mold a certain mind and thought and manner of looking at the world because once upon a time, the funniest man who ever walked the earth was a leaf or McDonald. Phil Hartman is the favorite anything ever I've ever watched in my life. While Norm MacDonald may be the funniest man to ever be on TV, Phil Hartman was the most entertaining. He too is a leaf. I mean, he was born in Canada but raised in California, but come on. Um, I have never heard, and no one until the end of the universe will ever hear an unkind word said about John Candy. There is no peer or equivalent to William Shatner and even Mike Myers. And in fact, there are some episodes of Second City TV that have aged better than SNL. Like, what is it about Trailer Park Boys that makes people around the world go, yeah, just like us? I know Trailer Park Boys is a over exaggeration of certain things, but things do not endure if there is no truth embedded within it. So, the point I'm trying to make is that I don't speak about Canada out of hatred. I'm not an expert in Canada. I went up there twice, and I used to entertain fantasies about escaping to Canada in the event World War III happened and everyone under the age of 65 got a draft notice. And then Canada prevented people from leaving its country because of COVID, but they imported a million people at the same time, which doesn't make any fucking sense to me. You weren't allowed to leave the UK, but there were planes and boats of refugees showing up every hour on the hour. White pill, I tell you these things and I read to you what I did because I think what happened to Canada is a fucking travesty. It won't last forever. Like nothing lasts forever. No witchcraft, no brujeria lasts forever. Nothing stays at the bottom of the ocean. Even the fucking Titanic eventually surfaced back to the air. Um, I I just I just think it's really sad and tragic. And the only thing sadder than what happened to my country is what happened to yours. So, thus concludes the preachy part of this podcast. I just wanted to share to you and to everyone else. I'm not some crazy person talking wild shit. I know what I'm talking about. And I'd like to believe what I read to you is true.
Yeah, it's there's there's so many layers to it that it's hard to dissect it all at once. But yeah, that's the overwhelming belief that I've kind of, or the conclusion that I've come to in the last couple of years, is that um there's so much great potential here, and there's so many great things that we can do, not just as individuals but as a nation here. And for the longest time, we've been squandering it for one reason or the other. Um, and I'm certain that things will eventually turn around because, I mean, look, the there's a story from a book. It's actually called the White Pill by blanking on his name. Michael Malice. He's a Russian immigrant to the U.S. who lived in New York and now he's in Texas. But he wrote the book, um, and he talked famously about this quote where, um, I think it was like it was some kind of diplomat talking to some Soviet diplomat, and he was basically telling him like, "Hey, aren't you concerned about the situation what's going on with the Berlin Wall?" And the Soviet diplomat was like, "Look, you don't understand these things. Like they happen. You know, these changes take time. This is going to take decades before anything can happen." And then next thing you know, the next day the Berlin Wall fell, and the Soviet Union collapsed, and all that happened. So look, even with all the doom and gloom, even with all the negative shit that's happened, I if my ancestors were able to overcome their struggles with even um less opportunities and less resources available to them, and their struggles were actually like literally potentially world ending, um or at least just catastrophic, then I believe that we can overcome too. And at the end of the day, like whatever like politics is in charge or whatever political institution is in charge or what have you, whatever forces are at bay, that's never going to be enough um, to stop the people from. And it sounds corny as fuck, but it's never going to be able to stop the will of the people, and it's only a matter of time before uh, that resurges in a real significant way. The trucker protest was like the biggest symbol of that, for sure. So all the stuff that's happening now, like yeah, it might seem like really negative and it's really bad and it's worth paying attention to, but it's not the end all be all. It's not the last chapter of this country. So I have faith. I have faith that things are going to improve over time. Um, just because I mean it has to. Like there's you know it's like when you find yourself at the there's that I don't know if it's an anecdote or a joke, but it was like these it's a joke. It's like I'm gonna butcher it, but it's like these two soldiers that are digging a hole and it seems endless. Oh yeah, no, soldiers digging a hole and it seems endless, and then there's another guy that comes across the hole. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm just doing my job. I'm digging." And the other guy joins him, and he's like, "Why the fuck did you do that for? Like, there's no ladder to get out. Like, what are you doing?" He's like, "Well, at least we're in this together. Like, we're stuck here together, and one way or another, we're gonna make it out of it." And I think that even if that sounded nonsensical, but I think that at the end of the day, there's enough sense in enough people in this country to take matters into their own hands and do something. Like in the clearest example, just to like kind of ground this sentiment. There was a case I think about a year ago or so where in this community in British Columbia, it was around Christmas time. They noticed that they were having break-ins in the suburban neighborhood, and the police weren't coming along, and there wasn't anybody that was able to do anything about it. So a bunch of these dads decided to get together and do this patrol route along the community, and they found this guy that was trying to break into somebody's truck, um, and they made a citizen's arrest and they held the guy there. And in the most Canadian fashion, like they sat down with the guy and they told him, like, look, like if you need access to resources, if you need some clothing, if you need some food, we are more than willing to give that to you. But you got to stop breaking into people's homes because instead of spending the holidays with our families, we're out here patrolling the streets, and we understand that you're having a hard time, but this is not a way to go about fixing your life. And I mean, that is about one of the most Canadian things I've ever heard. Because at the end of the day, like, regardless of what the fucking politics are of all those people that were doing all the patrols and shit, they got together. They saw that their community was in harm's way, and they took it upon themselves to do something about it. And hopefully, that guy got the help that he needed. But when I hear stories like that, it reminds me like the Canadian spirit is still alive, and there are people that are willing to stand up for certain values or certain things that are actually productive and will help us move forward. So regardless
Well,
of like all, yeah, no, go ahead, go ahead.
like to kind of circle back to something you said, where like, um, I'm grossly paraphrasing when I say this, but like, um, you alluded to how like a lot of it is just talk and there's nothing happening like outside. And I was reminded of there's a punk band called DOA from Canada. And like they have it's either an album or a song, but like talk minus action equals zero. And like that always stood out to me. I only know about DOA because they did an album with Jello Biafra. He's like the front man of the Dead Kennedys, and like he's done a bunch of spoken word albums. And look, like Jello Biafra is now a crunchy Greenpeace liberal faggot that blames Russia for everything. And he was like, everyone must get vaccinated. Fuck you. Anyways, like never. He's a perfect reminder that like heroes get old, heroes change their mind, heroes can be bought out, heroes sold out, heroes die. Never meet your heroes unless you want to see Superman doing cocaine off a dead hooker. Okay. So, that being said, he did leave behind an incredible amount of work. I truly believe that like Trump just broke people. Like they're like TJ Miller. Like, he was a comedian and he was on Silicon Valley, and then
I
he
remember
just
him. Yep.
got
Yep.
drunk. Yeah, and then he just got drunk and fat and crazy because of Trump. And like, it's just, I will never, some people will never recover. I like how Stephen King went from like looking like your old lesbian aunt's best friend who runs a bookstore in Provincetown, and he went from that to being like every libtard stereotype come to life. Fuck you, you lesbian looking old man. Get back to writing the horror. You were better when you were drunk and on drugs. Tuh, tuh, tuh. Um, anyways, um, what you described is a perfect example of local is all there is. Because I bet you there were dads that got involved after witnessing, like, the reason you have to do the act is so that others witness you doing it and realizing it is empowering and the right thing to do. And I don't care how fucking morally preachy that sounds, but I bet you the number of dads they started out with and the number of dads currently, there's a world of difference,
Oh yeah.
because some dads peered through their blinds or opened the door and watched that happen, and maybe something clicked. Maybe they went, I could do that, anyone can do that, or they went, that's the right thing to do. Because, you know, I'll quit quoting myself so fucking often, and I know I gotta finish doing the American part so I don't come off like an ugly, hate-filled man talking about Canada and other parts of the world. But like, hear me out. About when it comes to doing the right thing, just bear with me. Selling one's soul isn't about contracts signed in blood. It's about choosing to do the wrong thing as soon as the right thing becomes inconvenient. I'm this applies to many things, and I've tried very hard to state things in my books that anyone can understand. And this can mean selling one's soul, like throwing your best friend under the bus, not caring for someone because now it's out of the way and a hassle. And guess what? When you know better and you don't do any better, that is no different than selling your soul. There's no other way to put it.
Yep.
So, um, like what you described is very touching because if I understand correctly, I don't know if this is all across Canada, but I've read articles where it was like, Canadian homeowner is now facing charges for defending his family after three Somalis broke into the front door with hatchets.
Yep. There have been a couple cases like that. Yep.
Yeah. And I hate to say this, but your government will never truly understand how many people were ready to go out in a blaze of glory like a fucking like in the Alamo for if and when it was like, knock knock, we're here to vaccinate you because you're a bad citizen. And not just fucking mullet heads in Winnipeg who get into fight with chugs, who get into fist fights with chugs in alleyways over a Bic lighter, and they're both wearing the same shitty denim jacket. It's not just fucking mullet heads in Winnipeg or psychopaths in Manitoba or like the the pretend Americans in Alberta who just talk the most shit, but like Americans, like most Americans, they don't follow through on it. I don't know if it pertains to all of Canada, but for fuck's sake, man, like you, there are countless pockets of your country where people spoke in secret with their friends and had an Alamo plan just in case Mounties or worse showed up. And I don't say that to come off as hard or a big tough guy, but no, even in Ontario, there were a lot of men who looked at what was happening and were like, finally fulfill my desire to fend off a home invader because it's the government and my family's on the line. Sad but true. Sad but true. But, you know, to assume all hope is lost is pointless, and now you're no better than a nihilist. and I share your sentiment. And where, because dude, like when you were talking about like the Soviet diplomat going, these things happen all the time, and then the fucking Berlin Wall fell. Well, when a nation collapses, it's usually the secret police who are last to know.
Oh
Like the
yeah, yeah,
diplomats are
yeah.
usually the last to know. Like it doesn't it just so anyways, I'm sorry for cutting you off. I if things were not this bad, I'd have no reason to say and write what I say and write. But here we are. And
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
smarter should have said this. Someone smarter should have written this down. And I'm not the best and I'm sorry, but now I'm here.
No, I mean honestly, like it's in a lot of ways it's actually might seem counterintuitive, but it's good that we've kind of caught ourselves in this because it's like there's I remember there's a some kind of a testimony that the director of The Wire was doing. It was at some like local city, and he was talking about how like part of the inspiration for the series that he made was that in Baltimore especially there was just such a rampant wave of corruption, especially in the municipal government, that most people had kind of turned a blind eye to because people had just kind of abdicated their responsibility for political engagement and just kind of
I
assumed
don't
that their
I'm
leaders.
sorry for
Yeah.
interrupting. I'm sorry for
Hmm.
interrupting. And you give me an example because like I look, I only ask because like corruption can come in many forms, but like in America, corruption, like unless like unless you show someone getting a cartoon bag with a dollar sign on it and like some guy in a suit is giving it to like the mayor, most people can't wrap their head around corruption unless it's like, oh hey, there's a purge in China and Z sent like 100 politicians, they just vanished overnight because of corruption. Or or like, hey, there was a banker in Vietnam and he colluded with Goldman Sachs, so his punishment for corruption is getting beaten to death with chairs and then he's hung. Like,
Yeah.
so corruption is handled differently in other parts of the world, but like, like a nice way of saying corruption is lobbying sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can you give an example of corruption? I don't mean to be nitpicky and shitty about it. I know you're focused on what you feel is right and good and wanting to do a program that has you are essentially leaving something behind with your work. So excuse me for keeping the audience in mind because like it's something I have to keep in the front and in the back of my mind whenever I'm on someone else's program or like I think about look, there's a lot I want to say and write, and not all of it is kosher or halal. And I'm certain a lot of it is ugly and hate filled. So I have to pick the best for what ends up in a book. That being said, can you elaborate? Can you give me an example of corruption like that you're talking about?
Well, I don't know in that specific case regarding like what was happening in Baltimore. I don't know of any that come to mind. But just as like if we're just talking in the North American context, the easiest one that I could remember is the ArriveCan app, which during COVID it was this app that was made specifically to process not just immigration but anybody that's coming across the border to make sure that your vaccination record and everything was up to date. And so what ended up happening was the firm that was tasked with making this app ended up outsourcing all of their work to various other firms, so they got paid millions to not build the app, but to outsource it for pennies on the dollar. So they had the app made by some other third party companies for the cheap. And
Mm,
the company that was in charge of outsourcing that project was paid millions in grants, which got caught up in the scandal because the app actually never ended up working. It also ended up sending a lot of notifications to people to self quarantine and isolate when in reality they were actually not in any danger whatsoever. So, if you consider the implications of that for the average working person, that means that like you had to sit at home for a week or two, which meant that you missed on wages, in a time when people were struggling to make ends meet. And this was one of, I think it was, if not the first time, this is one of the few times in Canadian history that a private citizen was called before Parliament to testify on this subject. And there were no fines that were placed. There was no jail time that was sentenced. Like, there was absolutely nothing. So, this is yet another case of uh, government contract going awry where the person was essentially able to just charge the government for millions and millions and millions of dollars when an app that could have been made for a fraction of the cost was made by a third party. In fact, I remember at the time there was somebody that went viral on LinkedIn because the scandal was coming up, and they're like, "Fuck it, we could just make this app over a weekend." So they did, and it cost them a fraction of it, and it only served to show just how much of a joke the whole thing was. Because even though they had this quote unquote investigation, like nothing came of it. Absolutely, like no jail time, nobody was charged, the money was not returned to Canadian citizens. Like nothing happened. So the whole thing was a nothing burger. And this, like, in the grand scheme of things, what I have open right now is just the Wikipedia page for the Canadian scandals. And if you go to the years before 2010, so before Justin Trudeau got into power, or sorry, 2015 rather, you'll notice that the number of scandals is very infrequent and their depth and breadth is very little. The moment that you hit the 2015 and you keep scrolling down, you'll see that Justin Trudeau's scandals while he was in power vastly outweighs any other administration in the entire history of Canada.
Oh yeah.
So long-winded way of saying, yeah, there was that's simply like the easiest way of corruption is that like the
Okay.
government contracts were paid, they inflated the costs, and nobody got charged for it.
Okay. Okay. Well, I hate to admit, but like I do find it a little funny how it's like, um, it's harmless compared to like stealing a train at gunpoint, but it's almost like Canadian corruption is like American corruption light. It's still scummy, but like when you think of corruption, you're thinking of things like, oh yeah, so Margaret Thatcher cut funding for districts that didn't like vote her into power to the degree that like school kids were going without milk. And to this day, there are people that still call her Thatcher Milk Snatcher. And like that was like as as scandalous as I got. And then like American corruption is like, oh yeah, we just fed retarded kids radioactive mush because reasons. Go fuck yourself. Bring your lawyer. What are you gonna do? Call the cops? Eat the peanuts out of my shit, you fucking plebeian. You're gonna vote for me again. Suck my dick, faggot. That's American corruption. That's or like, yeah, you're watching me dump toxic waste into this river. The fuck you gonna do about it? What are you looking at my eyes for? I got candy in my eyes? Don't look away. I'm fucking talking to you. You walking away from me? All right, I'll find out where you live, cocksucker. That's American corruption. Like that's, or it's like, yeah, that's a cop selling crack. What are you gonna do about it? Go to internal affairs. That's what Chris Dorner did.
Yeah,
Faggot,
no,
do something about it.
yeah, that's
That's
fair.
American. That's
Yeah,
American corruption. I'm not trying to be mean. It's just like,
no, no, I get you. Yeah.
but like, it's a fucking travesty. But like, it's like travesty light. I'm
I mean,
sorry.
that's
I'm
yeah, no,
sorry.
that's fair. I mean, that's not the most like extreme case that I can think of. The most extreme one that is honestly like I'm still dumbfounded by is the fact that during like we had an election during COVID, and during that election, both China and India had infiltrated our government to the point where they had MPs for both the NDP and the Liberal Party. I don't know if the Conservatives are implicated in this, but I know the NDP and the Liberals are. They had essentially created ties with them so that they would push forward policies that would benefit both China and India. There's at least 11 of these MPs that are actually still sitting in Parliament to this day. Their names have not been released. There was an entire investigation that was done, and nobody has served time or had anything to do with like any kind of I don't know, any punishment whatsoever. And there have been a couple of independent journalists on Twitter that have resurfaced old photos of Justin Trudeau standing with people that are linked to the People's Republic of China, like their party and everything. So there's like no doubt ties between our government and foreign powers like China and India, which have only received like surface level investigations that have absolutely gone nowhere, and the people that are implicated in these investigations are still in power, making decisions on a daily basis. And
Oh,
so, yeah.
now hang on. Now hang on there, white pill. Let me just stop you right there and flex my corruption muscles. All right. So there was a Chinese spy that fucked congressmen and senators, and they all kept their jobs, and we have their names.
I heard about that. Yeah.
And remember, you gotta find a girl that you gotta find a girl that loves you the way Fan Fan loves China. Some of the politicians she slept with were like American caricatures of fat dumb oafs, but they always show you that one like, hey, I looked like I played lacrosse in high school and was pretty good at it. The guy on the left, yeah, yeah. They always show you pictures of her with him to make it seem like, whoa, he fucked a chick a little lower out of his league. Yeah, I mean, she kind of turned out okay. She got to fuck captain of the lacrosse team, and then you see everyone else she fucked, and it's like, whoa, damn. Damn, like were you punished by the CCP to fuck like gut sack losers that couldn't see their dick when their shirts were off and they looked down? It was embarrassing. So yeah, it's fast. Yep. You see old Tuballard looking motherfucker over there? You see Baron Harkonnen? Huh? You see him? Hello, I'd like the first most expensive item on the menu, stuffed into the second most expensive item on the menu. And I'd like 3 cups of cookies and cream ice cream microwaved in a coffee mug as my beverage. No water, thank you. Look at that cocksucker. I just. Why are you looking at me
uh,
like that? Is there a piece of food stuck on my face? Oh, thinking about bagels, I start to sweat. Oh. I bleed cold onion gravy. My blood type is ragu. Oh, look at him. I'm so fat when I jerk off, it's a foursome. I know, but seriously, like,
yeah.
is there not a world of difference between, I played lacrosse and hello? There's a world of difference between those two guys.
My God.
So
Wow.
yeah, that's like I hate but here's the thing, because you mentioned China and India, okay? So Um, Dianne Feinstein is I forget if she's a senator or a congressman, but she was like she's emblematic of all the scum that Democrats do that they claim to hate in Republicans. Like Republicans are just on the outside what Democrats are on the inside.
Wasn't she
So
found in
yeah,
like a
her that
seniors home like that was catatonic and shit, and she was like away from her post for like months?
yep. Yeah. Whoa. Pepperidge Farms, come higher white pill. He remembers better than I
Yeah,
do. Shit.
that was fucking
Um
nuts.
Oh, dude, and on top of that, her driver was for like over 20 years turned out to be a Chinese spy.
Oh my God.
Like then that's and did she get fired? Nope. Like it's so, but here's the problem though, and I have a theory about like corruption and fuck ups in people in the corridors of power. The bigger the fuck up, the bigger the promotion. Because the only way to prevent pitchforks and torches knocking on your window is to just get promoted. Because then it's like, what are you going to do? The mob wants vigilante justice against someone who is moving on up the ladder. There's something wrong with this picture. So then the vigilante justice becomes even harder to sell to the public, because it's like, imagine a guy caught embezzling funds and now he's the VP of Goldman Sachs instead of thrown to the wolves and eaten alive by the SEC, you know? So, this is easiest seen in politics, and I just find it fascinating how in Canada, um, they don't even know the names of those cocksuckers, but here, it's like, oh hell yeah, it was her, it was him.
Wow.
I
Uh,
still can't get over. I still can't get over like fucking that human thumb with a face. Fucking fan. Yeah, can you go back? I want to see this guy's face one last time. I'm so sorry. Uh,
they must have like held her parents hostage or some shit. Oh, come on, where is it?
oh. They were holding a
Oh,
gun. They were probably saying shit like, we're gonna send your family to where the Eagers live if you don't fuck that fat guy." Ay ay ay.
oh, there it is.
Yes.
Wow,
I believe the appropriate term is massive unit. That's oh
that's a
yeah.
massive unit right
Shit.
there.
I'm oh boy, he doesn't have diabetes, he has nowabetes. Shit. Okay, okay. I'm try the veal, folks. I'm here till Friday. So, okay. Thank you for letting me get that out of my system. I'm oh boy.
uh,
Um, so very quickly, there are a handful of things I would like to read before we close this out. Only because I don't know how long we've been recording, but I'm pretty sure you have enough for like 2 or 3 episodes. But if you are a complete fucking maniac and upload the whole thing in one sitting, ah, that's incredible.
yeah, I might have to cut this in two. We're at our fifth hour. I think this is the longest episode I've had yet.
Honestly, though, like I'm kind of weirded out at how fast time went because I didn't realize what time it was until now because I'm like, yeah, I could go for another hour. It's after midnight. Fuck.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I got shit to do tomorrow. No, don't worry. I'm not. I don't mean to like rush you off. I just don't
No,
know
it's all
what your
good.
plans are or what time you got to be up tomorrow. Like I don't want to assume or nothing.
No, no, fair. Yeah,
Um.
I gotta get up for work tomorrow too. But I've been having a good time, so it's all good.
So. All right. Let's see. Here we go. Having the because if I understand correctly, like I think in Quebec, you're allowed to drink in the park. I don't know if that's a Canada-wide thing.
Probably just a Quebec
But
thing. They
like,
they they had a pilot program where they tried to like have it happen in Ontario, which I was honestly not all that for because like people are already doing it. Now that you passed it a law and you made it okay, now you just made it okay for all the degens to do it out in public. Like I don't know, but in Quebec, yeah, I think you're allowed to.
okay, because just real quickly, disclaimer. I smoke weed once in a while. I'm getting older, so I really can't like fucking huff weed like cigarettes. Some people could keep that up. I can't. And also like not to come off like an old man, but like, you know, and like I never even touched weed until I got into college. I know people who started when they were a kid and just to keep and I don't think honestly, I don't think kids should even do drugs until like somewhere between the ages of 18 to 21, then you go for it because hopefully your brain is done molding and shaping the way it's supposed to. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
I'm sure this makes you sound like a fucking old Puritan man, but the point is, how the point is, I have fond memories of smoking weed and listening to music, and it took me a little while until it's like, whoa, okay, now I'm where I gotta be. Now, like like, oh man, I better sit down. I am sitting down. Shit. And now I'm not even high anymore. Now it's an ordeal. I'm not having fun anymore. Like, so,
yeah.
um, that being said, and no, dude, like I can't like because like if I roll a spliff the size of what I used to smoke halfway into it, I'm like I can't finish this. and like I gotta like put it out. But then if you put it out, you could smell it from a block away because that shit is partially burnt. Like it doesn't, and I don't want to walk around with a fucking bowl. Where the fuck am I gonna put the bowl if I'm out and about outside? You know? And whatever. I'm okay. So having the hardest time explaining to family overseas why it's fine if people spark blunts in the park, but a bottle of wine with a picnic spread on a date might get you a ticket for an open container. And I bring this up because when weed got decriminalized, it suddenly became cringe because I could smell it everywhere. I
Yep.
oh, it was so like because it used to be like I don't want to say done in secret, but like you smell weed in public, and like certain people. It's like, all right, you ever play the video game Metal Gear Solid?
No, but I've heard of it and I've seen scenes of it.
Okay, okay, so you know the little codec where like the two-way communication happens and it has the sound, like that sound.
Yeah, yeah.
So my friend has that sound on his phone whenever he gets a text, and it's like all the while people's heads turn like they're like Colonel, like they're expecting a briefing when they hear that sound.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter
yeah.
where. He could be like in the Metropolitan Museum, on a train, in the park, walking down the street. But people break their fucking neck, or another friend of mine, he has there's like a little beeping sound from the Power Rangers where and like so whenever he gets a text, old heads start looking around wondering like I recognize it but I don't know from where. And
Mhm.
they're trying to ascertain where it came from and ask my friend, what's that from? I've seen it happen. I could count on one hand the number of times I've seen that happen. And my boy, he would be like, "It's Power Rangers, bro." And then you could watch them have several flashbacks at once in real time and like soft reset before they get back to Earth. So, anyways, the reason I bring this up is because like the the codec sign, and just one last thing before I forget. Um, it's buried into my head because I'm a big fan of Metal Gear Solid, and I hope I don't sound like a crazy person going, I could only relate to other people bringing up other things, but like I never know what someone knows, and I never know what someone doesn't know. So, anyways, the whole point I'm bringing this up is this, okay? So, there's a oh fuck, hold on. Give me a second. Someone's calling, but I don't want to not pick up, but I gotta pick up. Fuck. Give me one second.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
really
You're
sorry.
alright. You're alright.
All right, fuck. That was my editor. I'm gonna have to fucking rapid fire a few lines at you real quickly, and then we gotta wrap this up.
Sure,
So,
sure.
okay, just let me just shoot a few things off, and we make fun of America, and we can leave on a good note. Okay,
You got it.
go. America has the fattest poverty on earth, overfed and undernourished. The number three import to hoods across America is anime. Uh, Americans call 911 more than they call their grandparents. Sad but true. Jesus trying to come.
Uh.
Um, G- Jesus trying to come back, and the U.S. government keeps shooting him down with missiles. Um, the Federal Reserve will soon print money, then unprint it at night when nobody is looking, then print it again in the morning. No one will notice. I live in the United Statistics of America. This touches on something everyone can, I hope, will understand. Mass deportations would solve the food crisis. Just saying. Uh, Governments fund criminal organizations that negatively impact their enemies. Sometimes they provide a type of quasi legal but under the table immunity to organizations directly targeting their enemy nations. Some Mexican cartels have had it since their inception. Thanks, America. Oh, the Cherokee owned 19,000 black slaves. And where are they now? Exactly. Uh, U.S. Department of Damage Control.
So this is an FBI mandated shooting. You're gonna have to wait outside.
Uh, Small talk in a bait shop between Tampa and Clearwater, consisting of shotgun infantry in the Everglades fighting giant black swamp snakes. NASA scientists with them. And the Lions game last night. 20 years ago, when I was living in San Francisco, on a dead end alley, I witnessed a man give a woman a hit from his crack pipe from my window. She then bent over a parked car and pulled down her pants, allowing the man to fuck her. More effective than any anti drug PSA I've ever seen. Uh, I've never eaten at Golden Corral. The commercials always featured slightly funny looking families in their commercials, which I always took to say, look, we don't judge here. Uh, Now is your last chance to get a pre 2005 car before the second Great Depression and next Cash for Clunkers program rounds them all up and destroys them like last time. They will make sure new cars are the only option.
Yep.
Let's see. Most Americans would have a little less disdain or maybe even a little more respect for people in charge of our country if they put a little more effort into not saying things we all know to not be true. So, are there any closing thoughts? Are there any closing remarks you'd like to throw out there and yell at me with?
I mean, thanks for coming on. I appreciate having this long form conversation. It's not often that I get the chance to speak to people like yourself, so I'm just glad for the opportunity to do so. Um, with whatever the state the world is in right now, or whatever the fuck is going on, we've kind of like beaten this horse to no end, but it's worth doing. Uh, Focusing on things that can actually impact your immediate radius is a lot more impactful than focusing on anything else that is in any way tied to the culture war. And I think that it's only a matter of time before more and more people start realizing this. I think that, as you said, like the 2020s are kind of a reprieve from the 2010s, in the sense that like the 2010s were the call and the 2020s are going to be the response. And there's a lot of systems that are breaking down and dying, and fucking good riddance, whether it's mainstream media or mainstream politics or any of these things. And a lot of people are just getting fed up with all this bullshit. And it's great to see that a lot of people, or an increasing amount of people, are kind of waking up to that, and they are trying their best to dissociate themselves and separate themselves from it, and are trying to embrace something different, whether it's independent journalism or uh, trying to get out of the rat race and making something of themselves, or disregarding gay theism and trying to replace that with some kind of semblance of faith. I think that a lot of these systems that we grew up with and our parents grew up with, they are just unsustainable in the face of reality, and it's great to see them die in uh, in full view of everyone. And the longer that these people try to keep hiding the plot and pretending that it's not happening, it's only going to worsen the end for them. So at the end of the day, even all the negative shit, I'm optimistic for the future because, look, like you said, nothing stays at the bottom of the ocean. Even the Titanic was resurfaced, and there is no beating. There is no amount of lying that can beat reality, because no matter how hard you try to lie or try to obfuscate the truth, the truth is always going to come out. And like that quote from the guy in the Berlin Wall, like, oh, these things take time. These things take decades and decades to change, and then overnight, uh, something as tremendous as that act happened, which people never thought would. So I think we're just seeing the beginning of it, and I'm optimistic because I've been able to find people like yourself that not only share the sentiment, but are also actively making a living off of pointing out uh, just the absolute ridiculous, backward, fucking bullshit lies that we've been sold for all these years. And now we're able to actually uh, do things that our ancestors would have never dreamed of doing. Whether it's like you can just become a published self author just by sending some pages to Amazon, and next thing you know, you're changing the hearts and minds of all the people that consume your media. So uh, I'm optimistic, regardless of all the shit that's happening. I'm optimistic that uh, that change is going to happen from the ground up, and that more people are going to become more engaged with this idea of disconnecting themselves from this bullshit reality that we're sold. Um, and it's fun to poke fun at it and to see the clown world for what it is and to laugh at it. And there's never been a better time to not only do that but make money off of it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm optimistic. If that's my final message that I could say. What about yourself?
Oh, that's great. And to your point, and I think this sort of lends itself to the Soviet diplomat analogy you gave. Uh, to quote Uncle Ted, and no, I'm not a fanboy of him, but broken clock twice a day. Try and argue with this, okay? Never lose hope. Be persistent and stubborn and never give up. There are many instances in history where apparent losers suddenly turn out to be winners unexpectedly, so you should never conclude all hope is lost. I, it's
Right
hard
on.
to argue. It's hard to argue with that. So, let me just plug and chill my shit, and I'd like to leave on some parting words about nothing stays at the bottom of the ocean forever, no witchcraft lasts forever, and so on. Um, Come on down to queenstrash.com and buy a shirt. Or if you like anything that has crawled out of my mouth since this started, uh, go to a search engine of your choice and type in "All Dogs Go to Heaven Except Pit Bulls," and then click on the book. And it is volume one of the I Told You So trilogy. When I hang up, I have to go yell at my editor after he's done yelling at me for volume two, which is coming out soon. Hopefully sooner rather than later, but fingers crossed soon. If you're hip to uh, time sync, attention driven algorithm, uh, app on your digital ayahuasca infinite direction pocket scrying machine called Instagram. You can find me at stained_Haynes. If you're on Twitter, you could find me at trash radio underscore, all one word. And if you ever see me hassling Elon about getting my account back because Grok is willing to say what safety support and the official X account won't, meaning the appeals process is like trying to describe a red apple to a colorblind person who's never seen produce, and that's putting it nicely. Yeah, feel free to jump in and help me tell him to go fuck himself. I mean, I can't do that because I'd lose my account. Fun fact: the editor of my first book, he got nuked by invoking our selection and calling Elon Musk a deadbeat dad. Didn't even add him; just typed out the name. Elon has things in place to constantly search for when and where people mention his name online and especially on Twitter, which, as a man in his 50s lying about being good at video games, come on, bro. So, that being said, um, leave on one final thought. No witchcraft lasts forever. I don't know if you're familiar with Babe Ruth, but
Hmm.
he's often cited as one of the greatest anything in the history of ever. Now, interesting to note, some people like to play the actually card and say Hank Aaron had more home runs than Babe Ruth, which he did, but it took Hank Aaron an entire lifetime, and Babe Ruth died like before he turned 30, I think. Um,
Hmm.
Also, fun fact: Babe Ruth uh, led the league in home runs, but he also had the shittiest batting average. Much to consider. All right,
Hmm.
like we most people only care about the end result, the grind, the struggle, the process. Not a lot of people give a shit about that. Like, and that's something I hope people understand. Like, I'm a tortured artist in the process and whatever. Did you fucking hit a home run or not? Because if it's over the fence, it's a home run. That's it. The end. You know. So that being said, the curse of the Babe is when Babe Ruth was on the Red Sox and he wasn't doing too good, and then they traded him to the Yankees, and then when he got to the Yankees, he became like level 99 on day 1 and level question mark on day 2, and on day 3 they woke up and he was just made out entirely of like um cheat codes and Game Genie because he was unstoppable. So uh the curse of the Babe is that ever since trading away Babe Ruth, the Red Sox were almost like destined to never win a World Series. And then in like 2004, 2005, they won the World Series. So the good news is witchcraft doesn't last forever. The bad news is when they demolished the old stadium where the Red Sox played, they found a Babe Ruth jersey that had like chains and padlocks on it and like unidentifiable
Whoa.
stains, but among them like blood. So like just I don't listen. Anton LaVey once said that black magic works best against people who don't believe in it.
Hmm.
So the good news is even the worst of the worst witchcraft that is buried in the foundation of a building that dictates like the destiny of a sports franchise, no matter how much money you put into it, no matter who is on your staff, the good news is it doesn't last forever.
Well said. Well said. Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, yeah, man. Thanks again for joining me. It's been a pleasure. I'd love to have you back on sometime. And yeah, wish you all the best with the second book. I gotta still make my way through the first book here. I'll let you know what I think of it when I end it off. But yeah, man, it's been a pleasure to get to know you, and it's good that we stayed in touch. Hopefully, one day I can make a trip to New York and we can actually have this conversation in person over a couple of drinks or something. But yeah, man, it's been a blast.
Oh, that would be lovely. If you ever find yourself in Queens, come by. I'll feed you till you fucking burst. Thank you for having me on your program. I'd love to come back anytime. Just hit me up. As long as Queens exists, hopefully I'll be on my stoop muttering to the sun and shaking my fist at something unrelated.
Right on, right on. Well, hey, man, you have yourself a good night. Good luck with the editor there. Oh, I think we lost him.
Oh,
There you are.
hang on. Buenas noches, dude. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Have yourself a good night. Good luck with the editor.